Chapter 21. Li Qingshan went to the best restaurant in town and bought a dozen jars of good wine to fill the ox cart. He then followed the list given by Oxen and went to the medicine shop to buy most of the medicinal ingredients. However, the most important ginseng could not be bought from the medicine shop. In the largest inn of Cypress Creek town, a group of people wearing bamboo hats and carrying medicine baskets on their backs were silently drinking tea. Even in the inn, they refused to take off the bamboo hats and medicine baskets on their backs. From time to time, the shopkeepers of the big medicine shops would come to the inn and open the baskets to see what was inside. They would then hide their hands in their sleeves and bargain with them. If they succeeded, they would take away a bag of ginseng of different sizes. They were ginseng foragers from Ginseng King Village. Like Drawn Rain's village, they were both located deep in the mountains. However, they made a living by gathering mountain ginseng. If one wanted to buy ginseng, they would naturally buy it for the lowest price. Li Qingshan stopped the ox cart in front of the inn and looked around. He strode to a corner and said to the ginseng foragers, "I want to buy ginseng." The ginseng foragers saw that he was young and his clothes were shabby. They all looked at him with disdain, and no one responded. Li Qingshan frowned and took out the remaining 1,000 taels of silver in his pocket and placed it on the table. "I want to buy ginseng." This time, all the ginseng foragers raised their heads in shock. They did not expect Li Qingshan to take out so much silver. They looked at each other and finally, someone said, "How much do you want to buy?" Li Qingshan had already understood the price of ginseng. In the end, they agreed on a price and left with a large bag of ginseng. The ginseng foragers whispered, "Should we get rid of this brat? It's more important to find the spiritual ginseng. That's a treasure worth tens of thousands of taels of gold. Even mortals can prolong their lives if they eat it. If martial artists eat it, they can immediately become first-rate experts. They can even break through the obstacles and reach the innate stage. Although the spiritual ginseng is good, there's only one. We still have to deal with that sickly man from Drawn Rain's village. I don't think I have the luck to get it. A bird in the hand is better than 100 in the forest. Those who are willing to do this, follow me." 7 or 8 people stood up, grabbed the sabers at their waists, and left. Not far away from the door, a person was hiding behind a pillar. When he saw this scene, he quietly left. Li Qingshan drove the ox cart forward alone on the mountain path, chatting with Oxen from time to time. Little and also poked his head out from the locust tree, sitting on the beam of the cart and listening to their conversation. When they reached a narrow valley, Oxen suddenly stopped and turned around to look at Li Qingshan. "Here comes your trouble." As soon as he finished speaking, 7 or 8 figures appeared on both sides of the valley. With his eyesight, Li Qingshan asked, "You are people from the Ginseng King village?" The group of people had knives in their hands. It was obvious that they wanted to kill and rob. I've still underestimated the viciousness of the human heart. He could only sigh in his heart. It wasn't that he didn't understand the principle of not flaunting one's wealth, which was why he immediately drove the ox cart back to the village after buying the ginseng. He didn't want to stay for another night. However, he didn't expect that this group of people would be so daring to kill him in broad daylight. It was rumored that these people who climbed the cliffs every day to gather spiritual herbs and ginseng were extremely valiant. Moreover, they were all skilled in martial arts. Their bodies were as light as birds and as agile as monkeys. "Kid, we have some things to discuss with you," the leader said calmly. His eyes revealed a hint of disdain, as if he was looking at cattle and sheep in a cage waiting to be slaughtered. "Leave everything behind and you can go." This kind of calmness wasn't fake. They traveled in the mountains all year round. When they met lone travelers, they would kill them and take their belongings. It was a common thing for them to do. After the deed was done, they naturally wouldn't let anyone live. The ginseng foragers laughed and surrounded them. Seeing danger approaching, Li Qingshan suddenly shook the reins. Oxen glanced at him and cooperated, speeding the ox cart forward. refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The ginseng foragers cursed and hurriedly dodged to the sides. 2 flashes of knives flew out from their hands and slashed at Li Qingshan, who was on the cart. Oxen swung its head, and its remaining horn drew a strange arc in the air. The leader of the ginseng foragers saw the horn coming at him, but he couldn't dodge it. The horn pierced through his stomach and nailed him to the cliff wall. The ginseng forager's eyes were still wide open, and blood gushed out of his mouth. He couldn't believe that with his martial arts skills, he would die to a cow's horn. At the same time, Li Qingshan somersaulted and landed on the ground. He dodged the 2 flashes of knives and held the thick steel knife in his hand. Oxen pulled out the horn and thought to himself, from an ox's perspective, I've done better than I should. The rest is up to you. The ginseng foragers cried out in surprise, Brother Gung. This Brother Gung was the best among them, but they didn't expect him to die in such a strange way. They couldn't have imagined that Oxen was a monster. Then, he fiercely said to Li Qingshan, Brat, do you know what you've done? I originally wanted to give you a quick death, but in a while, we'll cut off your flesh piece by piece and feed it to the wolves. Li Qingshan sneered, with just you guys? His expression was extremely solemn as he slowly pulled out his knife. He didn't expect to encounter 2 battles in one day, and each one was more dangerous than the one before. Sure enough, having martial arts skills also meant that it was easy to get into trouble. If he was just a weak peasant boy, he obviously wouldn't be able to fight against the people from Drawn Rain's village, and he definitely wouldn't have that much money to buy ginseng. This was the most dangerous battle he'd ever encountered in his life. Even though he had supernatural powers, he didn't dare to say that he could walk on flat ground. Oxen's words rang in his ears. His thoughts flashed, and the battle was about to begin. Kill! A strong gust of wind blew, and the 4 waist knives formed a net that enveloped Li Qingshan. The bull demon forges its hide would definitely not be able to block such a blade. Li Qingshan quickly made a decision. Without even looking behind him, he strode forward and pounced on the 3 ginseng foragers in front of him. His mind wasn't completely focused on the battle to the death. Instead, he kept thinking about the corner of Oxen just now. Oxen definitely wouldn't help him fend off the enemy. Otherwise, with its strength, it would be a piece of cake to kill these ginseng foragers. There was a deep meaning behind that corner. At the juncture of life and death, his comprehension and spirituality were all forced out. His eyes suddenly lit up. The bull demon but its horns required every part of its body to be a horn, and the weapon was just an extension of the body. The straight, thick steel knife in his hand suddenly seemed to have a mind of its own, and it went around a waist knife that was blocking. With a pu-pu sound, a ginseng forager's neck sprayed out a mist of blood, and he fell to the ground on his back. Experienced. This kid knows martial arts. A series of shouts rang out, and the ginseng foragers looked at Li Qingshan. Their expressions were no longer as casual as they were just now. Li Qingshan's arms also had 2 new wounds. Thanks to the toughness of the bull demon forges its hide, they hadn't been cut open. Instead, the ferocity in his heart was aroused, and his eyes burned with fire. Come! A group of people was hiding in the dense forest on the side of the valley. They were only about 100 feet away, and it was broad daylight. No one in the valley noticed them. Only Oxen glanced in his direction. Chapter 22. At this moment, Li Qingshan's steel knife had taken another person's life. Although he had also been stabbed in the back, the cut was not deep and the wound had shrunk, so not much blood had flowed out. At the same time, a knife stabbed into his lower abdomen. He gripped the knife tightly and raised his hand, chopping off a terrified head. His ferocious aura was intimidating. Xiao He had not been convinced at first. He had thought that Li Qingshan had won by launching a sneak attack, so he had been looking for an opportunity to get back at them. At this moment, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Li Qingshan's knife technique was exquisite, and his killing intent was so fierce that it shocked him. This wild beast was not something a half-baked hunter like him could kill. He was glad that they were just now in the middle of the city, so he had not drawn his knife against Li Qingshan. In a short while, 7 people were lying on the ground. Li Qingshan knelt on one knee with the help of his broken steel knife. There were more than 10 wounds on his body, and his clothes were soaked in blood. Some belonged to others, and some belonged to himself. There was only one ginseng forager left, and his face was filled with fear and madness. Even though he had committed many murders and robberies, he had always bullied the kind. He had never seen such a brutal battle in his life. You lunatic. Li Qingshan's expression was like a hard rock. In the face of life and death, every move he made exceeded his usual level and stimulated the potential in his body. However, this was also very exhausting. In a short while, he was completely exhausted. So this is the path I have chosen. It's really full of blood. Oxen stood leisurely at the side, as if asking, "Do you regret it?" "I'll kill you." The ginseng forager roared and rushed forward. He had no strength left in his body. The knife landed on his neck, and the chill made his hair stand on end. Li Qingshan roared, "I don't regret it." The qi in his body flowed into his hand. He gripped the steel knife tightly and swung it to meet the attack. Twang! Swoosh! The bowstring tore through the air, and a feathered arrow shot out, nailing the last ginseng forager to the ground. Li Qingshan raised his head in shock. A few vigorous figures slid down from the cliff. They were the hunters of Drawn Rain's village. They carefully approached Li Qingshan and suddenly grabbed his limbs. However, in that instant, Li Qingshan had exhausted all his strength and was carried to the top of the valley by them. "Brat, you've done well." Huang Binggu put away his bow, praised, and did not say anything else. With a wave of his hand, the hunters once again hid themselves on both sides of the valley. Not long after, the other ginseng foragers rushed over and checked their companion's corpse with grave expressions. When they saw the ginseng forager who had been nailed to the ground, their expressions suddenly changed, and they shouted, "Retreat! Release!" With Huang Binggu's order, arrows rained down from both sides of the valley. The ginseng foragers suddenly waved their blades, but unless their martial arts skills were far inferior, there was no way they could block the arrows. Cries of pain rang out. Meanwhile, Huang Binggu held his bow and stood on a protruding boulder, specifically aiming at the ginseng foragers who were trying to escape. Every arrow would hit its target, and not a single arrow missed its target. He was like a god of death. Li Qingshan propped himself up and watched. He also felt astonished. On one hand, he was astonished at how easily the battle between the 2 large villages had ended, and on the other hand, he was astonished at the power of the bow and arrows. He cultivated the ox demon's fist of great strength, and the thing that increased the fastest was his strength. If he could use a bow, wouldn't he be able to kill people like this? When Huang Binggu shot his 5th arrow, the cries of pain had already stopped. Only weak moans could be heard. Huang Binggu. A ginseng forager whose thigh had been shot let out a shrill cry. "That's me." Huang Binggu leaped off the cliff and asked, "Where's the spiritual ginseng? If you tell me, I'll give you a quick death." "You? How do you know?" "I know a thing or two about the matters around the 100,000 great mountains. The spiritual ginseng has appeared in the mountains near Drawn Rain's village. Consuming it can cure all diseases and prolong one's life, right?" "I originally thought it was fake, but looking at your expression, I'm starting to believe it. You want to snatch food from the tiger's mouth? Aren't you overestimating your own abilities? You want to use the spiritual ginseng to cure your illness, but that's just wishful thinking. You have no idea how to capture the spiritual ginseng. Just you wait, Ginseng King Village will not let this matter rest. You want to contend against Drawn Rain's village with that broken village of yours that is in a state of disunity? He. Once this news spreads, who knows how many experts will gather at Drawn Rain's village." Huang Binggu's expression changed slightly. Are you willing to do that? Seeing that he could not get any more information out of them, he waved his hand, and the hunters all stepped forward to finish off the surviving ginseng foragers. Then, they searched for their belongings, lifted them up, and threw them into the valley. In the blink of an eye, all the corpses on the ground had been cleaned up. Only traces of blood remained, showing how desperate the battle had been just now. When the next mountain rain fell, there would be nothing left. At certain times, a human's life was truly as insignificant as an ant's. The hunters' gazes once again turned towards Li Qingshan. Their gazes were filled with admiration and praise, but there was also an undisguised killing intent. Li Qingshan had heard a great secret. The people of Drawn Rain's village would definitely not let him leave. The simplest method was naturally to kill him with a single slash and throw him into the valley along with the ginseng foragers. Unfortunately, Oxen was not willing to help him, leaving him to wander between life and death. Coming out of the mountains this time, he understood that his strength was no longer what it used to be, but he also realized how weak he was now. Perhaps this was Oxen's goal. Huang Bingu said, "Little brother, are you willing to come with me to Drawn Rain's village?" "What if I say I'm not willing? You don't know how to appreciate favors." "Kill him." The hunters were enraged. Huang Bingu waved his hand and said, "I don't kill innocent people. If you are not willing, then leave. I believe that you are not a blabbermouth person." Li Qingshan was not that uncooperative. Based on the other's ambitious and ruthless demeanor, he would not be soft-hearted when it came to killing people. Perhaps he would not kill, but the hunters under him were all brimming with killing intent. Furthermore, he had the intention of going to Drawn Rain's village to take a look. Perhaps he could learn some hunting and archery techniques. That way, he would be able to survive without the help of oxen. Furthermore, his own strength would increase greatly. As for the spiritual ginseng, he did not dare to think too much about it. "In that case, I shall accept your invitation." Just now, Huang Bingu revealed a smile. He ordered someone to bring some ointment and applied it on Li Qingshan. However, he discovered that the wounds on his body had shrunk and were no longer bleeding. He clicked his tongue in wonder. Li Qingshan endured the pain and went to the ox cart. He took out the newly bought ginseng and put it in his mouth to slowly chew. Then, he opened the clay seal of the wine jar and gulped down the wine. The wine washed away the ginseng, and a wave of heat spread through his stomach. Immediately, he felt much more spirited, which astonished everyone even more. Li Qingshan climbed onto the ox cart and no longer paid attention to the others. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. Recovering from the fatigue and pain on his body was secondary. He wanted to take this opportunity to sum up the gains and losses of this battle. First of all, he could no longer rely on luck. He had heard people say that the martial world was dangerous, but today, he had personally experienced it. One careless step could cost him his life. In this world, human life was really too cheap. It was impossible to always have someone to help him, and it was also impossible to rely on exploding on the spot. To be brave but not astute was to seek one's own death. This great life had to be cherished. Chapter 23. As the heat spread through his body, the sliver of qi became active as well. It flowed through his wounds and gave him a slightly itchy feeling. Huang Bingu released a few agile hunters as scouts. The group of people hurried into the depths of the mountains around the ox cart. They walked all the way until the sky darkened. They entered a large mountain, and there was no sign of human activity in the surroundings. At the foot of the mountain, Li Qingshan saw the legendary Drawn Rain's village. Tall wooden walls surrounded the village, and there were watchtowers in the four corners. It did not seem like a village, but more like a military camp. He approached it and passed on the message. Just now, the gate opened. It was not as casual as it had been in Crouching Ox Village. As the only outsider, Li Qingshan attracted everyone's attention. He did not show it on the surface, but he became nervous inside. This was the legendary dragon's den that could make an army rein in their horses. Although Huang Binggu did not seem to have any ill intentions, he still needed to deal with him carefully, just in case he lost his life carelessly. The thick steel blade had already been taken away. Even if it was still there, it had been damaged to the point where it could no longer be used after the battle. Huang Binggu arranged for him to stay in an empty courtyard. Although he did not send anyone to watch over him, he told him not to wander around. Afterwards, he left in a hurry. In the pavilion at the very center of the village, the most prestigious hunters of the Drawn Reins village were currently discussing around a round table under the illumination of a few lanterns. For the sake of gathering ginseng, the Ginseng King village has had grievances with us for a very long time. People from the village often die mysteriously in the mountains, so it's probably their doing. They even set their sights on the spiritual ginseng this time, so it's a perfect opportunity to give them a stab in the back. The two villages were only a few mountains away from each other. There was no clear boundary between them. The ginseng foragers made a living by gathering ginseng, while the hunters spent most of their time in the mountains, so they could still recognize ginseng. They obviously would not let it go if they came across it. As a result, many disputes arose. The disputes between the villagers would often be settled with knives. Because they were far enough apart, large-scale fights had never happened. Until a while ago, on the Bai Lao Peak, which was closer to the Drawn Reins village, between the two villages, they once again met on a narrow path. They discovered a legendary spirit ginseng that already had the shape of a human and could even leave the ground and walk. Such a rare treasure caused another massacre. After the massacre, the spiritual ginseng had already disappeared without a trace, but it should still be on Bai Lao Peak. The men from the two villages did not dare to act blindly without thinking. They searched the mountain on a large scale, but they were also making preparations. Hunting chief, this matter must not be leaked out. It's better to deal with that brat. That brat's skills aren't bad, and his temper is also to my liking. It would be a pity to kill him. I want him to stay in the village and contribute to the village. But he is still an outsider. There's no need to say any more. I will examine him carefully. If he doesn't have the qualifications, I will definitely not be lenient. Huang Binggu said resolutely. Then, he coughed. In the pitch-black hut, Little End crawled out from the locust wood tablet and looked at Li Qingshan with concern. He reached out his hand and touched the scabs on his body. Li Qingshan said, "Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm fine for now." Although he could tell that Huang Binggu appreciated him, the feeling of having his life in someone else's hands was really uncomfortable. And if he wanted to control his fate in his own hands, he could only become stronger. He immediately followed Oxen's instructions and used the ginseng wine to soak the medicinal wine. Just now, he stopped and looked at his results, feeling a wave of joy and gratification. The next morning, Li Qingshan woke up early to practice Ox Demon's Fist of Great Strength. Suddenly, he felt a gust of wind behind him, as if a fierce tiger was pouncing at him. Li Qingshan turned around and punched, but it landed on empty air. Huang Binggu brushed past his arm, his right hand forming a claw and grabbing at his throat. He wants to kill me to silence me. A thought flashed through Li Qingshan's mind. Instead of dodging, he met the attack head-on, as if he was delivering his vitals into someone else's hands. At the same time, he drew his arms together like an old bear hugging a tree, exerting all the strength in his body. He cultivated in strength remarkable abilities, not mortal martial arts. Even though he had not cultivated the strength of an ox, the strength of a single hug was not something that flesh and blood could withstand. Huang Binggu suddenly retracted his claw, shrinking his body and circling behind him. "Not good," Li Qingshan said. Just as he was about to adjust his body, he felt that Huang Binggu had stopped attacking and was only looking at him approvingly. If he had retreated from that claw attack just now, the full power of that attack would have easily torn his throat apart. But instead of retreating, he advanced, restraining the power of that move. At the same time, he used a move that put his life on the line. Not only was he able to adapt to the situation, he was also quite courageous. I've lost. Li Qingshan touched his neck. There were 5 bloody marks on it. Huang Binggu's skills were quite impressive. Even if he was not injured, he was definitely not his match. Where did you learn your martial arts? Huang Binggu asked. Other than being courageous and adaptable, Li Qingshan's martial arts were also very unusual. Even if a normal person's reaction was fast enough, they would not be able to catch their breath. Furthermore, when his 5 fingers had touched Li Qingshan's neck, it felt as if he had pierced the tough hide of an ox instead of a soft vital point. Li Qingshan naturally could not say that he had been taught by an ox, or else he would be treated as an idiot. He could only say that he had met an expert a few years ago. Seeing that he had a simple and honest personality, the expert had taught him a few moves, but had instructed him not to reveal his identity. A few years ago. Huang Binggu was flabbergasted. He was not too surprised that Li Qingshan was not willing to reveal his master. However, he had originally thought that Li Qingshan had practiced martial arts since he was young. If he wanted him to stay in Drawn Rain's village, the most important thing was to ask him about his master. What's wrong? Li Qingshan did not understand. Haven't you been practicing martial arts since you were young? In just a few years, he was able to teach you to such an extent. It is truly inconceivable. It seems like that expert is truly an expert. Li Qingshan sweated in his heart. Luckily, he had casually said it was a few years ago and not a month ago. Otherwise, Huang Binggu would definitely be scared to death. At the same time, he also understood that mystical abilities and mortal martial arts were on 2 completely different levels. He was currently not Huang Binggu's match because he had practiced for less than 2 months, while Huang Binggu had spent 20 to 30 years of hard work. May I know why the hunting chief has come this time? Brat, do you have any intentions of settling down in Drawn Rain's village? Although it was a question, it had a tone that could not be refused. All right. Li Qingshan readily agreed, but it was Huang Binggu who was stunned. You don't have any nostalgia for your hometown? If I don't agree, would the hunting chief let me leave safely? Li Qingshan said calmly. Furthermore, I once heard a saying. What saying? Wherever I go is my hometown. Whether it's Crouching Ox Village or Drawn Rain's village, they're no different from me. Perhaps I can learn some archery here. Do you understand, hunting chief? My ambitions do not lie in these mountains and forests. With your mediocre martial arts, making a living in the Jianghu is just a path to death. Otherwise, you'll just be a small fry that serves as a stepping stone for the disciples of large sects and clans. How can it compare to the freedom in the mountains and forests? Is hunting chief's skill not enough? Li Qingshan was rather surprised. Huang Binggu's reputation in the surrounding villages could be described as illustrious. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. My archery is passable, and I've made a name for myself in the past. However, there are countless masters in the Jianghu. You've been practicing martial arts for several decades, but a child in his teens killed you like a dog. I suffered greatly. It's already fortunate that I managed to return alive. Chapter 24. Huang Binggu felt that he had not shocked Ting Qingshan enough, so he continued, your blade techniques and fist techniques are wide and open, so you should be walking on the path of external martial arts. This type of martial arts can be learned quickly, but if you don't have the assistance of a superior internal martial art, from the outside to the inside, reaching the realm of both internal and external cultivation, it will be difficult for you to become a first-rate master, let alone an innate master. First-rate master? Then what kind of class am I? And what is an innate master? Li Qingshan's string of questions made Huang Binggu somewhat believe in the words of an expert. If he had a proper master, how could he not know these things? Qingshan, your skills are not third-rate. That's why I don't qualify. You were able to defeat those ginseng foragers, so you can already be considered an expert. You are still young, so don't be too discouraged. As long as you train hard and become a third-rate master, you will be able to do as you please. With your talent, Qing Shan, this will definitely not be a problem. Huang Binggu was afraid that the blow was too severe and would dampen Ting Qingshan's spirit, so he comforted him out of goodwill. However, who would have thought that the goal that Oxen had given to Li Qingshan was to do as he pleased, and the so-called internal martial art was even more of a joke. An innate master is even more mysterious. First, you must open up all the meridians in your body, break through the threshold of life and death, and transform your inner energy into true qi. Then, you can circulate it freely in your body without any obstructions. Once your true qi reaches a certain level, you can even release it outside your body to injure others. Wait, it seems like the qi in my body can circulate freely now, but I can't release it outside my body. It must be because the amount is too small. Li Qingshan suddenly understood that from the beginning, he stood on a different starting line than ordinary people. The path he walked on was unimaginable to ordinary martial artists. Hunting chief, I will definitely become an innate master. Huang Binggu praised him, good ambition, but his expression was non-committal. An innate master? When he first heard about these things, didn't he also have this kind of ambition? But how could it be so easy? It was as if he saw himself from back then. If you really become an innate master, I will let you be the hunting chief. This was not a casual promise. In his mind, even if Li Qingshan could become a Xiantian master, it would be decades later. Who would have thought that the person in front of him was already a so-called Xiantian master? Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Hunting chief, you don't seem to be in good health. I was born weak. The doctor said that I wouldn't survive, but my mother didn't believe him and brought me up. I don't believe that I can't be compared to the other children in the village. I've practiced martial arts, but my foundation is still weak. I've been hurt all these years, and I'm afraid I don't have much longer to live. Li Qingshan really admired the man in front of him. Even though he didn't have any great magical powers, his willpower was enough to be his role model. Hunting chief, don't worry. As long as we find the spirit ginseng, we will definitely be able to cure you. And, although it's an ethereal object, it's still a slim chance of survival. Taking advantage of the fact that the Ginseng King Manor has suffered heavy losses, we're going to start searching the mountain today. Do you want to come along? My injuries haven't healed yet, so I'm afraid I won't be able to help you. Of course, Li Qingshan wouldn't agree. The other party was just saying it casually. There was no way he would really believe him. Alright, then we'll spar again when your injuries have healed. I'll arrange for someone to teach you archery. Huang Binggu patted his shoulder. After Huang Binggu left, Li Qingshan immediately asked Oxen about it. Oxen said disdainfully, what first-rate or second-rate? Do ants have to differentiate between strong and weak? If you can get that spirit ginseng, it'll be of great help to your cultivation. Li Qingshan could only stare at it anxiously. I'm very happy that you can learn to hunt and no longer have to rely on me. You can finally rest. From now on, you'd better take care of yourself. As expected, Oxen stuck to its usual plan of not lending a helping hand. Li Qingshan also didn't really plan on relying on it. As for snatching food from the tiger's mouth between two villages, he had even less confidence. He would most likely be throwing his life away for nothing. He could only sigh a few times and give up on this idea. He chewed on another ginseng and meditated until late at night. Just now, he was going to sleep. A wisp of green smoke rose from the locust wood tablet and transformed into a handsome child. He glanced at Li Qingshan and, as if he'd made up his mind, flew into the mountain with the night wind. His bloodless lips opened and closed. If someone who was proficient in lip reading saw it, they would know that the word he was muttering was, spirit ginseng. Oxen opened its eyes and glanced at him, then closed them again and went back to sleep. Little An flew out of Drawn Rain's village and into the undulating mountain range. He freely passed through the dense forest, but he still had to avoid the fierce mountain wind from time to time. He saw a bit of fire in the distance. When he flew closer, he saw that it was the hunters of Drawn Rain's village resting by a bonfire with their weapons. Huang Binggu was discussing tactics with a few hunters in a low voice. Little and circled around a few times and listened for a while. Then, he rode the wind and flew up Bai Lao Peak. He carefully examined every stream and every rock. Of course, he would occasionally be attracted by small animals passing by and forget his original goal. However, he would always quickly regain his senses and continue his search. There was only one thought in his mind: I must find the spirit ginseng. Only then can I help him. At the fourth watch, the ginseng foragers launched a night attack, but they were repelled by the prepared Huang Binggu. However, neither side found the spirit ginseng. Little End was the same. He returned to the village before the sun rose. His face was full of exhaustion and he was almost tired of it. It was not easy for a child's mind to last. Furthermore, this job was too lonely for him. He had already tasted the feeling of loneliness. However, when he looked at Li Qingshan's face that was still fast asleep, a new motivation suddenly surged in his heart. He clenched his fists and dove into the locust tree wooden tablet to sleep. Early in the morning, an old hunter with a stern expression woke Li Qingshan up. "Chief Hunter, let me teach you archery." Li Qingshan noticed that the old hunter's left leg was slightly lame. However, in order not to be rude, he only glanced at it. He did not expect the old hunter to have already noticed it. He calmly said, "You were bitten by a wolf. Follow me." A group of teenagers were already waiting in an empty space on the west side of the village. The older ones were about the same age as Li Qingshan, while the younger ones still had snot dripping from their noses. However, all of them carried a hunting bow on their backs. Their gazes towards Li Qingshan were filled with wariness and hostility. "Grandpa Zhang, is he coming with us as well?" Grandpa Zhang nodded slightly and did not explain further. He directly said, "Draw the bow." The group of teenagers immediately stopped talking. They drew their hunting bows and aimed at the target in the distance. Grandpa Zhang corrected their postures one by one and explained the essentials of archery, leaving Li Qingshan to the side. Li Qingshan did not feel bored and listened attentively to the side. After an hour, Grandpa Zhang ordered the others to rest and finally said to Li Qingshan, "Train your strength first." He pointed to the stone dumbbells at the side. Li Qingshan went to grab the stone dumbbells. Compared to teachers like Oxen who did not care about your life, this level of cold treatment was still acceptable. Grandpa Zhang revealed a slightly surprised expression. He did not like Li Qingshan, but he could not disobey Huang Binggu's orders. Therefore, he had purposely given him the cold treatment to train his temperament. He did not expect him to not be angry at all, which was completely different from what he had expected. He thought to himself, no wonder the chief hunter thinks so highly of him. "Brat, where did you come from?" The teenagers could not help but approach him. Their faces were filled with provocation. "Crouching Ox Village." "Humph, you're just a farmer, yet you have the strength of an ox. I heard you even brought an ox with you." "We don't need oxen here, so let's kill it and eat its meat." Li Qingshan could not stoop to their level and shout about killing him, but he would not allow them to insult him as they pleased either. His arms suddenly exerted force and he threw the 2 stone dumbbells that weighed several dozen kilograms high into the air. Holy shit! The teenagers scattered in all directions in fear. If the stone dumbbells that weighed several dozen kilograms fell down, they would definitely have their brains smashed to pieces. The stone dumbbells fell heavily. Li Qingshan did not dodge at all. Instead, he focused all of his attention and grasped the timing. He grabbed the stone dumbbells and twisted his body to nullify the force of the impact. He looked at them with a smile. The group of youngsters were dumbstruck, and they made a series of swallowing sounds. How much strength was needed to lift those 2 stone dumbbells? Most of them could do it, but throwing them so high up in the air was impossible, let alone catching them again. Chapter 25. Grandpa Zong was finally shocked, born with great strength. He then shook his head. I forgot, you practice external hard martial arts, so it's not surprising that you have a bit more strength. Archery isn't just about having great strength, take this. Grandpa Zong took the hunting bow from his back and tossed it to Li Qingshan. This is Grandpa Zhang's bullhorn bow, it weighs 1 stone. This is Grandpa Zhang's intention to make things difficult for that kid. Drawing a bow and throwing a stone lock are 2 different things. 1 stone was 120 kilograms. Normal hunting bows did not pursue power, but precision and dexterity. It was rare to find such a hard bow. If the bow was too hard, its power would increase, but if the person using the bow could not control it, the accuracy and shooting speed would be very poor. If they encountered a wild beast in the mountains, they would not be able to shoot the second arrow in time and the beast would pounce on them. Only death would await them. However, hunters who could use this kind of hard bow were all godly archers. Killing tigers and leopards in the mountains was not a problem. Li Qingshan weighed the hunting bow in his hand. It was a fine oak bow, wrapped in animal skin and wrapped in silk. The bowstring was made of ox tendon. It was light in the hand, but it was very powerful. He followed the method that Grandpa Zong had taught him just now. He lowered his waist into a horse stance and pulled the bowstring. The muscles in his body also relaxed. Grandpa Zong was surprised to find that his posture was very accurate. He remembered that he just now was watching from the side, so he gave him some pointers. Li Qingshan understood everything. In just a moment, it felt like he had put in 3 months of hard work. When learning to draw a bow, it was not easy to use a bow that was too hard. One had to start with a soft bow and shoot many arrows to practice. Only by slowly correcting the posture would one be able to increase the strength of the bow. Grandpa Zong directly gave his bullhorn bow to Li Qingshan with the intention of beating him up. Even if you had great strength and could pull it open, it was nothing if you couldn't shoot properly. However, Li Qingshan's performance was beyond his expectations. It wasn't that Li Qingshan's comprehension was far superior to others. What the ox demon's fist of great strength taught him was the most basic method of channeling qi and exerting force. As long as he grasped the key points, he would be able to master them very quickly. Sweat seeped out from Li Qingshan's forehead. Maintaining the posture of drawing the bow was indeed more exhausting than lifting the stone dumbbell. His bones and muscles were aching all over his body. This is a good way to train my strength. Although it is very tiring to train my fists are always in the air. In the future, I will need to buy a strong bow to train my strength. It will definitely be very beneficial. Alright, aim at the target and shoot an arrow for me to see. Grandpa Zong instructed. Li Qingshan put down his bow and rested for a while. Then, he picked up an arrow and drew the bow again, aiming at a target 50 paces away. Calm down, don't be in a rush to shoot, look at the target. Grandpa Zong instructed from the side. Li Qingshan's eyes stared straight at the bull's eye. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, but because it was daytime, no one noticed. Under his full attention, the target seemed to have grown bigger, no longer so unreachable. Legend has it that in ancient times, when archers practiced their archery, they would tie lice to a string and watch it day and night. They would see the lice slowly grow bigger. At first, it was as big as a car wheel, then as big as a mountain. It would fill their eyes, and when the arrow was shot, it would pierce through the lice's body. Li Qingshan had this feeling at this moment. He knew that this was most likely the effect of oxen's tears. It allowed one to see fast as slow, see far as near, and see through in spirits. Hit! Li Qingshan suddenly had an idea. The arrow left the bow and flew towards the target. Thud! The arrow landed deeply on the wooden target, but it did not hit the bull's eye. Instead, it landed on the edge of the target, barely avoiding missing its target. Li Qingshan felt slightly embarrassed. Even though it didn't hit the bull's eye, it's still a hit. The people around him were shocked, speechless. This was the first time he shot an arrow in his life. He shot a strong bow and hit a target that was 50 steps away. Even in this village that relied on archery for a living for generations, they had never heard of someone like this. Just where did this guy come from? Grandpa Zhang forced himself to remain calm. Just practice properly in the future. As an old hunter, he knew very well that this was Li Qingshan's first time shooting an arrow. He could not estimate the direction of the arrow's fall and the effects of the mountain wind. But I still feel that this bow is not strong enough. As the saying goes, draw the bow with force. Li Qingshan wanted to pursue a strong bow that could only be drawn with all his strength. Grandpa Zhang did not say anything after hearing this. He took the bow from Li Qingshan's hands and shot at the target in the distance. His cloudy eyes suddenly became as sharp as an eagle's. He waved his right hand several times. Out of everyone present, only Li Qingshan could see it clearly. He fished out 3 arrows one after another. Thud! The 3 arrows formed a line and landed on the bull's eye. However, there was only one sound. There was a moment of silence before a series of cheers erupted. Rapid arrow. How could Li Qingshan not know the name of this archery skill? He had read about it in a book in his previous life, but he had treated it as an interesting thing. However, after seeing it with his own eyes, he knew that this was a true killing technique. He estimated that unless he fought in close combat, it would be difficult for him to escape this kind of archery skill. If Grandpa Zhang were to ambush him, he would definitely die. Grandpa Zhang looked at Li Qingshan without saying anything. Li Qingshan already understood what he meant. If he could not use this kind of archery skill, how could he talk about, draw the bow with force? It was not that Grandpa Zhang could not draw a heavier bow, he had just chosen the most suitable one. He walked up and bowed respectfully, saying with sincerity, Grandpa Zhang, please teach me archery. In the future, you will also be a part of my drawn reins village. There is no need for you to say anything. I will naturally teach you with all my heart. As for how much you can learn, that will depend on your own abilities. However, I believe that in the future, your archery skills will definitely be above mine. Grandpa Zhang was happy and his expression became pleasant. He did not like Li Qingshan at first, but when Li Qingshan displayed his talent and ability, shocking him and making him lower his stance, his mood took a turn. Not only did he immediately acknowledge Li Qingshan's identity, he even began to praise him greatly. This evaluation shocked everyone. Grandpa Zhang's archery skills were the best in the village, this was publicly acknowledged. Even the archery skills of the headhunter, Huang Binggu, were personally taught by him. For him to give someone such an evaluation, the entire village would probably be shocked. The group of youngsters who had originally been hostile towards Li Qingshan also surrounded him, talking all at once, faintly revealing their desire to get close to him. This was not because they were fawning over those in power, but because at their age, they had always respected the strong the most. Perhaps there were still some who were jealous and repelled him, but no one dared to look down on him or provoke him. The atmosphere in the area actually became harmonious. Li Qingshan understood more and more that if he wanted others to acknowledge him, he did not need to rely on flowery words, but rather, he needed to display sufficient ability. If he did not have this ability and wanted to rely on social skills to achieve this effect, not only would he need a very long time, he would also need to bend his back and bend his eyebrows, twisting his heart. Practicing until evening, Li Qingshan was already able to hit the bull's eye with every arrow. However, shooting an arrow like this required preparation. He was far from being able to shoot arrows as he pleased like Grandpa Zhang, much less shoot arrows in rapid succession. However, in the eyes of others, this was already terrible enough. For the next few days, Li Qingshan immersed himself in archery, improving day by day. Although he did not stop practicing, Ox Demon's fist of great strength, the speed of his improvement was extremely slow. Finally, after enduring for a few days, Li Qingshan returned home and carefully opened the jar of wine. The thick smell of medicine and wine filled his nose. He immediately picked up the jar and took a big gulp. Chapter 26. A thick wave of heat began to boil in his stomach. He immediately got up and began to practice in the courtyard. Only when the heat in his stomach completely disappeared did he let out a long breath and stop. Usually, he would feel tired after practicing for so long, but he was still full of energy today. As expected, the medicinal wine made from ginseng was much more effective than eating meat. Furthermore, the jinqi in his body seemed to have grown a little. Although it was very small, it was a real improvement. If the medicinal wine made from ordinary ginseng is like this, I wonder what the effects of the spiritual ginseng will be like. He had thought of this before, but when he thought of the difficulty and the consequences of obtaining the spiritual ginseng, he could only give up. In just a few days, a few hunters had been carried down the mountain. Some were dead, while others were injured. It was clear that the ginseng foragers were not easy to deal with. Although Li Qingshan had agreed to join Drawn Rain's village, it was only a temporary measure. He did not really want to participate in the conflict between the two villages. In the blink of an eye, it was the 15th day of the 8th month, mid-autumn. In the forest, Huang Binggu looked at the tired faces around him. These days, he had led the hunters through the mountains and had to be on guard at all times. Even though he had the upper hand and almost defeated the ginseng foragers, it was difficult to ensure his own safety. However, it would be difficult to ensure that one's body would be unharmed, and it would not be easy either. The spirit ginseng only existed in legends, and no one had seen it with their own eyes. There was no point in making a meaningless sacrifice. Huang Binggu let out a long sigh and gave the order to return to the village. Little Black said anxiously, "Hunting chief, you can't give up your body." Huang Binggu said, "The village is more important." Not only did they have to reunite with their families during mid-autumn, it was almost winter. The village also had to prepare for the winter. In a corner of Drawn Rain's village, in Grandpa Zhang's courtyard, Huang Binggu asked with a smile, "Grandpa Zhang, how is that kid?" "He is a natural godly archer. In the future, his archery skills will definitely be above yours and mine, but what? His heart is not in Drawn Rain's village. Even if we let him join, it will be useless. We are the hunting dogs that guard the mountain, but he is a wolf, and a lone wolf at that. He will definitely travel far away." "A lone wolf?" "That's because he hasn't seen the saying, a lone wolf is easily destroyed, but a pack of wolves is no match for it. I'll go see him. I don't believe that he won't be tempted by the position of Drawn Rain's village's head hunter." "You really want him to be a headhunter?" "That still depends on his methods." Huang Binggu smiled. "Qingshan, have you enjoyed your stay during this period of time?" Huang Binggu straightforwardly greeted Qingshan the moment he stepped into the courtyard. "Thank you for your concern, headhunter. I'm living very well." Ever since the news of Li Qingshan killing the 7 ginseng foragers spread throughout the village, everyone became friendly to him. However, this also meant that he had formed a mortal enemy with the Ginseng King village. Those ginseng foragers were not kind people, so he could only rely on the Drawn Rain's village to survive. But could he really only accept this arrangement? Li Qingshan said, "Hunting chief, I would like to spar with you again." Huang Binggu's surprised gaze met Li Qingshan's eyes, which were filled with confidence. Huang Binggu said, "All right, then let me see the results of your recent days." "Ha!" Li Qingshan did not wait for Huang Binggu to get into a fighting stance and suddenly dashed forward. Without any fancy moves, he fiercely punched Huang Binggu's chest, and the faint sound of the air being torn could be heard. "Good lad." Huang Binggu used his arm to block, and with a "pa" sound, he staggered back 3 steps before stopping. Shaking his aching arm, he had a look of astonishment on his face. What great strength! Although he had not clashed with Li Qingshan head-on the last time they fought, he reckoned that his strength at that time should not have been this great. Li Qingshan said, "Now watch this move." He immediately dashed over and continued to attack. His fists continuously struck his opponent's chest, and his attacks were like a violent storm. He displayed the power of his fists to the extreme, and his aura was extremely fierce. Huang Binggu had been careless for a moment and lost the initiative, falling into a disadvantageous position. However, it also aroused the heroic spirit in his chest. "I don't believe that you can really beat me in strength." He circulated his inner force, which flowed along his meridians to his arms. With the surge of inner force, his arms seemed to thicken as he met Li Qingshan's fists head-on. As a martial artist, all their martial arts were based on this inner force. By doing this, he was already using his true strength. Peng 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 peng. The two's arms crossed, clashing head-on. Every time they clashed, there would be a loud sound of flesh and bone colliding, as if wild beasts were tearing at each other. It was extremely rough and barbaric. Huang Binggu was, after all, very experienced. Seeing the right opportunity, he smashed his fist towards Li Qingshan's chest. Li Qingshan actually did not block or dodge, and instead punched towards Huang Binggu's face. Huang Binggu thought to himself, "I've bitterly cultivated my inner force for many years. The strength of my fist can even kill a calf. Even if you practice an external hard body technique, you will still be injured." As for Li Qingshan's fist, he was even more disdainful of it. His fist had struck Li Qingshan first, and Li Qingshan's figure would definitely freeze for a moment. With a peng, his fist struck Li Qingshan's chest. As expected, Li Qingshan's figure paused for a moment, but he immediately recovered and was not affected. Huang Binggu was greatly shocked, and hastily used a lazy donkey roll. The wind from the fist brushed past his cheek, causing him to feel a dull pain. Li Qingshan chuckled and stood still, no longer giving chase. Huang Binggu stood up. "You're actually fine." He was the clearest about the power of his fist. Even if Li Qingshan had used external force to block the strength of his fist, he would not have been able to block the true chi contained in his fist. However, it had not been of any use. Li Qingshan rubbed his chest. "It really hurts." Just now, there seemed to be a wave of chi that had passed through his skin and entered his body. However, it was immediately dispelled by the true chi in his body, and did not cause any damage at all. After that, he immediately regained his breath and almost hit Huang Binggu. Using Huang Binggu's words to explain it, this was the difference in quality between acquired inner force and innate true chi. Huang Binggu did not know whether to laugh or cry. His fist that was filled with confidence only received such an evaluation. However, all martial artists had a competitive heart. He shouted, "Then eat a few more of my punches." The two of them fought again. This time, Huang Binggu did not hold back and used all of his strength. His figure became much faster, and Li Qingshan could not block it. His fists rained down on Li Qingshan's body. From an outsider's point of view, Huang Binggu was suppressing Li Qingshan and had the upper hand. However, the two of them had different feelings. Li Qingshan only felt that Huang Binggu's movements seemed to have slowed down and become less unpredictable. Even when his fists landed on Huang Binggu's body, it only caused him a slight pain. Thus, he simply ignored him and focused on attacking. He was like a reef in a storm, not moving at all. Meanwhile, the more Huang Binggu fought, the more shocked he became. Li Qingshan's speed, reaction, and strength were all much stronger than the last time they fought. It was as if he had become a completely different person. He could no longer easily attack Li Qingshan's vital points, but it was completely useless to attack other areas. Furthermore, during the battle, Li Qingshan's attacks became more and more methodical. From time to time, he would use one or two extremely exquisite fist techniques, causing Huang Binggu to fall into a dangerous situation. Huang Binggu had to use his many years of experience to resolve the situation. The ferocity of Li Qingshan's fists told him that he would be finished as long as he was hit by one of his fists. The distance between the two of them was rapidly shrinking. As a result, such a strange scene appeared. One of them was punched repeatedly, but his aura was getting stronger and stronger. Meanwhile, The other was not injured at all, but his aura was getting weaker and weaker. Huang Binggu's forehead began to sweat, and he felt tired. However, Li Qingshan's expression did not change, and his heart did not beat. Oxen were originally animals with great endurance. The higher one cultivated, the more obvious the gap between magical powers and martial arts became. Chapter 27. Li Qingshan let out a long sigh. How satisfying! Huang Binggu's arms were trembling. That was the result of colliding with Li Qingshan's hand. He sized up Li Qingshan from afar with a strange expression. Just how did you train? This kind of improvement speed was simply monstrous. He had originally thought highly of Li Qingshan's will and martial arts, thinking that he had discovered a piece of unpolished jade in a pile of rubble. He wanted to polish it to see if he had the qualifications to take over the position of hunting head, but in the end, he realized that he had still underestimated Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan thought for a moment. Recently, I've been drinking medicinal wine brewed with ginseng. It's a prescription left behind by my master. Huang Binggu hesitated for a moment. Can I take a look? Originally, the rules of the pugilistic world forbade one from casually inquiring about such things, but he really wanted to know what was going on. Li Qingshan said without hesitation, no problem. Huang Binggu asked about the prescription, and Li Qingshan told him the truth. Huang Binggu nodded. This prescription is indeed exquisite, but isn't the medicinal strength a little too strong? Too much ginseng has been used, so you can't drink too much. Just a small cup every day is enough. Other than that, it was not much different from ordinary medicinal wine. He even specially went to Li Qingshan's room and tasted it. The conclusion he came to was the same. He did not believe that just drinking medicinal wine brewed with ginseng would allow one's martial arts to improve so quickly. Then wouldn't everyone in the Ginseng King village be peerless experts? But it would be too inappropriate to continue asking, so he could only suppress his doubts. He did not think about the martial arts that Li Qingshan practiced. After all, there were no extraordinary external martial arts techniques. Of course, Li Qingshan could not tell him that he drank this medicinal wine by the bowl. He drank at least a few big bowls every day, and he had already drunk most of it during this period of time. That's right, what grade is my martial arts now? Barely qualified as a third-rate. Huang Binggu still remembered his evaluation of Li Qingshan a few days ago. It would not be a problem for him to become a third-grade expert. In the blink of an eye, it had become true. It was like a dream. Only third-rate? Li Qingshan asked greedily. Huang Binggu's eyes widened. Anyone who could train their martial arts to the third rate could already be considered an expert, yet this fellow was still not satisfied. Didn't that mean that his martial arts were also only third rate? He was also someone who had been the headhunter of the Drawn Reins village for many years. He was not willing to be outdone by this brat. However, my expertise is not in martial arts, but in archery. In terms of martial arts, the people of the Ginseng King village are also slightly stronger than us. However, only we dare to call ourselves the Drawn Reins village. With our powerful bows and crossbows, even a first-rate expert would not dare to take them lightly. Moreover, the other reason was him. His illness was close to incurable, but even though he was called Sickly Tiger, the word illness was the most taboo for him. No matter what, he would not use this as a reason. Yes, I've been practicing rapid arrow recently and can already shoot 3 arrows in a row. Unfortunately, my accuracy is still a bit lacking. Please give me some pointers, hunting chief. Li Qingshan had seen Huang Binggu's archery with his own eyes, so he naturally did not dare to underestimate him. Being able to shoot 3 arrows in a row. You've only been practicing archery for a month. Huang Binggu felt that he had suffered too many blows today. He waved his hand. Tomorrow, go ask Grandpa Zong for pointers. I also want to go home for a reunion dinner. He understood in his heart that this brat might really have the aptitude to roam the martial world. There was no need to mention the matter of being a headhunter. If he had this kind of speed of improvement back then, he would definitely not have returned to the Drawn Rains village. That's right, it's the Mid-Autumn Festival again. Li Qingshan looked up at the sky. The full moon had just risen, but he had no relatives to reunite with. However, he still had a demon and a ghost by his side, so he could have a reunion dinner. Thus, he went to make preparations. He prepared grass for oxen, wine and meat for himself, and incense, candles, and paper money for little Anne. Everything was in order, but there was no sign of little Anne. Brother Nyo, where did little Anne go? I don't know. Li Qingshan mumbled. That brat has been playing wild lately. He doesn't bother me anymore. How strange. Let's just wait for him. The full moon gradually rose, and there was only silence on Bai Lao Peak. The bright moon shone down its clear radiance from the horizon. A few people wearing bamboo hats were lying in the lush grass, looking up at the highest cliff of Bai Lao Peak, as if they were waiting for something. We've spent so much effort, so many people have died, and we've become sworn enemies with the people of Drawn Rains village, but we haven't even seen a hair of the spiritual ginseng. Right now, even the people of Drawn Rains village have retreated down the mountain to reunite with their families, but we still have to stand guard. What is the Manor Lord thinking about? What do you know? The spiritual ginseng is a spiritual object. After being alarmed, it will naturally hide and not appear. However, tonight is the night of the full moon, so the spiritual ginseng will definitely appear and absorb the moonlight. The Manor Lord has already predicted this. As long as we obtain the spiritual ginseng, the Manor Lord's power will increase greatly. Why would we be afraid of Drawn Rains village? When the time comes, we'll flatten Drawn Rains village, rob them of all their food and wealth, and play with all their women. Only then will we be able to take our revenge. Quiet, don't ruin the Manor Lord's plans, someone at the side chided in a low voice. The voices of the people immediately quieted down, leaving only the low chirping of the dying autumn insects. The full moon rose high in the sky. A small person about a foot tall suddenly burrowed out of the ground, hesitantly walking towards the high cliff where the moonlight was the brightest. Upon closer inspection, it was not a small person, but a ginseng. However, it vaguely had the shape of a person. Under the night sky, it looked like a small person. When it walked, it was light as if it was floating. The ginseng foragers lying in ambush in the underbrush immediately held their breaths, not daring to make a sound. They had never seen such a miraculous spiritual herb in their entire lives. The spiritual ginseng looked left and right, as if confirming that there was no one around, then floated to the highest point of the cliff and settled down. Strands of moonlight twined around its body. Attack! With a command, the ginseng foragers attacked together. A net descended from the sky, pouncing towards the spiritual ginseng. The spiritual ginseng was immersed in the moonlight, and before it could react, it was caught in the net and lifted off the ground. The net was made of cow tendons, and no matter how it struggled, it could not break free. The 4 ginseng foragers beamed with joy, and moved closer to take a closer look. There are many cliffs on this Bai Lao Peak, and there are people lying in ambush everywhere. This spiritual ginseng just had to fall into our hands. The heavens are really helping us. When we get back, we'll definitely be able to get some soup to drink. Who knows, we might even be able to become an expert. Who knows, if we eat the whole ginseng, we might even become immortals. The few of them laughed heartily, and the smile of one of the ginseng foragers suddenly froze. A snow-white blade had pierced through his throat, and he struggled to turn his head. The tip of the blade had already retracted, and he immediately fell to the ground. When he fell, he could only vaguely see a black shadow. The other ginseng foragers reacted, and with angry roars, they pulled out their swords and slashed at the black shadow. The blade of the sword swept past their necks like a spiritual snake, and a few drops of blood splattered. In an instant, 4 ginseng foragers had died a violent death, and they did not even have the chance to retaliate. It was evident that the person who had come was highly skilled. I didn't expect the rumors to be true. Humph, you bunch of country bumpkins are not worthy of enjoying such a spiritual item. A young man dressed in luxurious clothing elegantly sheathed his long sword. At the same time, he stretched out his hand to grab the spiritual ginseng that had fallen to the ground. He could not help but feel excited. As long as he could get his hands on the spiritual ginseng, his skills would definitely increase greatly. Chapter 28. The man was startled when he saw the spiritual ginseng bobbing up and down in the air. He became anxious and used his qigong to grab the spiritual ginseng, but it flew straight down the cliff. He could only watch it disappear into the darkness, feeling so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. No, I must get this spiritual ginseng. When I go back, I will ask Father to send more people to search the mountain. The man thought that it was the spirit ginseng's own miraculous ability, but if he had opened his spirit eyes, he would have seen the spirit ginseng being tightly grasped by a pair of pale little hands. He was the mantis stalking the cicada, but he did not guard against the oriole behind. A ghost that he could not see had been hiding in the darkness. Under the cliff, Little N used all his strength to grab the spiritual ginseng and floated towards Drawn Rain's village with the night wind. He was so happy that he was about to explode. Fortunately, he had been nourishing his spiritual body in the locust wood tablet, so he had the strength to grab such a heavy thing. In the courtyard, Li Qingshan yawned. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he saw Little N float over from afar. Little brat, where did you run off to? Little N bit his lips and suppressed the joy in his heart as he held the spiritual ginseng in front of him. What is this? Ginseng? Li Qingshan took the spiritual ginseng and sniffed it lightly. A strange fragrance entered his nose and he immediately felt his spirit rise. The true qi in his body seemed to be much more active. Li Qingshan suddenly thought of something. This is spiritual ginseng. He couldn't believe that the spiritual herb that caused the two villages to fight and kill each other and cost dozens of lives was now in his hands. Oxen chewed on the grass lazily. Why else do you think this little brat runs out every night? Li Qingshan saw that Little N's face was full of exhaustion, but he was extremely happy. He even used his little finger to point at his mouth as if he wanted him to eat it. These days, Little N went out every dusk and only returned near dawn. He didn't talk much with him. He thought that Little N yearned for freedom and wanted to let him go. Only now did he know that it was all for him. You brat! Li Qingshan felt a lump in his throat. Why didn't you say so earlier? Little N smiled shyly and pointed at his mouth. Even if Li Qingshan had a heart of stone, he couldn't help but be moved by those pure and innocent eyes. He asked Oxen, this spiritual ginseng, Little N can also use it, right? Oxen said, this spirit ginseng is a rare innate item. The spiritual energy contained in it is beneficial even to evil ghosts. However, if you use it, you can easily achieve the strength of an ox. Are you willing to use it? Li Qingshan said, what's there to be reluctant about? The spiritual ginseng was obtained by Little N in the first place. Just let Little N consume it. I'll just slowly cultivate the divine ability. His principle of doing things would not change because of the temptation of the spiritual ginseng. Little N immediately retreated and waved his hand. All right, I will remember your kindness. Little N just shook his head. In the end, he simply turned into a wisp of green smoke and burrowed into the locust wood tablet. Hey, come out quickly. If you don't want it, I'll throw it away. Oxen suddenly shouted, since he has the heart, why are you so stubborn and like a little girl? Can't you find something hundreds or thousands of times better than this spiritual ginseng for him in the future? Li Qingshan shuddered inside. He nodded. Brother Ox is right. I've been too stubborn. All right, come on out. I'll be ingesting the spiritual ginseng. Shaoan immediately flew out. But this thing should belong to you. I can't take it alone. If you refuse again, I'll be angry. Little N just now agreed. Li Qingshan shook the spiritual ginseng in his hand and said, Brother Nyo, how do I use this thing? Little N's body of evil ghost could not eat anything. Oxen said, Go find a needle and take out a drop of ginseng liquid. Li Qingshan found a steel needle and pierced it into the spiritual ginseng. The spiritual ginseng trembled in his hand, but he was not soft-hearted to a plant. A drop of ginseng liquid seeped into the spiritual ginseng and hung on the tip of the needle. Oxen said, Well, drip it into his beer. Beer? Little N, look up. Shaoan hurriedly raised his head. The ginseng liquid dripped down from the tip of the needle and landed in between Xiao En's eyebrows. His body trembled like water ripples. The ginseng liquid in his body suddenly emitted a resplendent light. Little N closed his eyes tightly. The expression on his face alternated between pain and joy until the light disappeared. Just now, he calmed down and slowly opened his eyes. There was something else in his eyes. 2 lines of tears fell down. What's wrong? Oxen said, You must have remembered something. Is that so? Little Anne, do you remember who you are and where your home is? Li Qingshan knelt down and looked into his eyes. Little Anne hesitated for a long time and pointed in a direction. South. Li Qingshan asked, Is your home in the south? Which city is it? How far is it from here? But these questions, Little N could not answer. He could only shake his head blankly. Li Qingshan suddenly pulled out his hunting knife and started carving on the locust wood plate. Sawdust flew everywhere. The word south appeared on the originally blank side of the plate. He raised it in front of Little Anne. Under the moonlight, the young man knelt on one knee and promised the child seriously, No matter how many mountains and rivers there are, sooner or later, I will send you home. The child looked at his figure in a daze. He would never forget it. Just like the spot between his eyebrows where the ginseng liquid dripped, there was a red mole. Li Qingshan hung the wooden plate back on his waist and asked Little N if he felt any changes. He did not know if the spiritual ginseng was useful. Little N leaped into the air and flew around the courtyard like a whirlwind. He carried the hunting knife in Li Qingshan's hand and danced around the courtyard. If it was a normal person, they would only see a knife dancing on its own as if it had a spirit. Not only did Little N's speed become faster, but he could also control heavier objects and become more powerful. If it was a sneak attack, even a martial arts master would not be able to escape death. Brother Nyo, do I have to use it like this? That would be too wasteful. The best way to use this ginseng is to combine it with other spiritual herbs and refine it into a pill. But you don't have this condition. You can handle this spiritual ginseng like other ginseng and soak it in wine. This way, the spiritual ginseng will not wither and the spiritual energy on it will seep into the wine, turning it into spiritual wine. You can also slowly absorb the medicinal energy inside. Oh right, don't mix it with other medicinal herbs. This is a good idea. Li Qingshan knew that he could not digest the spiritual ginseng in one go. Otherwise, it would not be a great improvement in his skills, but an explosion. It's just that I don't feel at ease if I don't carry this treasure with me. Before he finished speaking, a wine gourd flew towards Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan grabbed it and said, Thank you, Brother Nyo. He put the spiritual ginseng into the gourd and filled it with strong wine before hanging it on his waist. He crossed his arms and his body was strong. The huge wine gourd hung on his body. Although he was still young, he was full of a bold and unruly aura. Little Anne, don't you think I'm becoming more and more like a person of the pugilistic world? Little Anne also laughed, but his expression changed to one of worry. However, he could not speak, so he was a little anxious. Suddenly, he had an idea and squatted on the ground. Chapter 29. Li Qingshan hurriedly asked, You can read. Did you remember it just now? Little N nodded and showed Li Qingshan the words he had written. Only now did Li Qingshan realize that someone else had interfered and attempted to steal the spirit ginseng. Their martial arts were very powerful. Since they had seen this item, they would definitely not give up and would definitely think of a way to find it. Looks like I still need to be more careful and not leak any information. However, when my magical powers advance further and I cultivate the strength of an ox, I won't be afraid of anyone. The longer the spirit ginseng was brewed, the better it would be. If it was too thick, Li Qingshan would not be able to digest it. Thus, after waiting for 3 to 5 days, Li Qingshan drank his first mouthful of spirit wine. A strange fragrance spread in his mouth. The taste was not strong, but rather faint. Extremely pure spiritual energy spread throughout his body. He did not dare to be negligent. He circulated his magical powers and digested this spiritual energy. To his surprise, he discovered that the effects of this mouthful of spirit wine were much better than drinking a jar of wine brewed from ordinary ginseng. The true qi in his body had doubled. Although ordinary ginseng could replenish vitality, it was still an acquired item and could not be of much help to true qi. On the other hand, Ox Demon's fist of great strength focused more on body cultivation than qi cultivation, so the growth of his true qi was not fast. This spirit ginseng was a true Khanate item. It was the best at replenishing spiritual energy, which was why it had such an effect. If this continued, it would not be long before he could achieve the effect of releasing his true qi. At that time, he could also call himself a Khanate expert. Brother Ox, I once promised to drink all the finest wine in the world. Now, I've more or less fulfilled my promise. After drinking this spirit wine, drinking ordinary wine would be tasteless. Oxen only sneered in response. At this time, there was a commotion outside and the sound of many dogs barking. Huang Binggu brought the hunters of the village to Li Qingshan's door and invited him to participate in the autumn hunt. Autumn was the best season for hunting. Not only did people have to prepare food for the winter, but the animals also had to do the same. All of them had to be plump and strong. It was an important gathering for Drawn Rain's village. Many big families would organize large-scale hunting activities at this time of the year, not to catch prey, but to train their descendants and cater to the killing intent of autumn. Huang Binggu said, "You've only learned archery and have yet to learn the true way of hunting. This time, when we enter the mountains, you'll follow me." Ever since the last time he fought with Li Qingshan, he no longer treated Li Qingshan as an ordinary youngster. Li Qingshan thought about it and still refused. "Thank you for your kind offer, but I want to hunt alone." Before Huang Binggu could say anything, the other hunters started discussing. What? Alone? Not only has he never hunted before, he doesn't even have a decent hunting dog. Are you really not afraid of the beasts in the mountains? Although they admired Li Qingshan's skill in killing the 7 ginseng foragers, they could not underestimate him in his area of expertise. Huang Binggu advised, hunting doesn't depend on good archery and skill. He suddenly remembered Grandpa Zhang's evaluation, a lone wolf. Li Qingshan still shook his head. He only wanted to learn archery so that he could use it to kill enemies and defend himself. As for hunting, there was no need for it. If he wants to be alone, then he'll be alone. Let's see what he can catch in the end. I don't think he'll even be able to catch a rabbit. Li Qingshan smiled, but did not comment. Suddenly, someone said in a strange tone, "He's already been freeloading in the village for so long, yet he still refuses to follow the arrangements. Does he really want to continue freeloading?" These days, all of Li Qingshan's food in the village had been delivered by Huang Binggu's people, so he must have used the village's resources. His appetite was also very small, so it was only natural that he would attract some dissatisfaction. Huang Binggu immediately berated that person. "Qingshan is also a member of our village. How can you be so calculative about some food?" Li Qingshan's expression turned serious as he cupped his fists and said, "Hunting chief, you don't have to feel bad. I, Li Qingshan, am someone who clearly distinguishes between kindness and hatred. I will never take advantage of others. I will definitely pay back double for what I've consumed in the village these days. Qing Shan, there's no need for that. Huang Binggu was furious at the person who said this. I wholeheartedly wanted to rope him into the village, yet you people are pushing him away for a few caddies of meat. Li Qingshan did not want to blend in with any place. There was no need, nor was he in the mood. I heard that the village has a competition every year during the autumn hunt to see who can hunt the most prey. The winner gets a prize, so I'll participate this year as well. Huang Binggu could not dissuade him, so Li Qingshan made some preparations. Under everyone's mocking gazes, he took a normal hunting bow and entered the mountains. The hunters went to the North Mountain, but Li Qingshan did not want to mix with them. To the west was the 10,000 Great Mountains. He understood the mysteries of this world, so he was even more unwilling to take risks. To the south was Bai Lao Peak, a troublesome place. Therefore, he could only head east. On Bai Lao Peak, a group of people wearing the same clothes and carrying long swords gathered together. The person in the lead was the young man who had almost obtained the spiritual ginseng after killing the ginseng forager. Search. Even if we have to turn Bai Lao Peak upside down, we must find the spiritual ginseng. Yes, young master. Everyone answered in unison. Using their exquisite qing gong, they flew to various parts of Bai Lao Peak. Li Qingshan went deep into the mountain forest. He did not know how to distinguish the tracks of birds and beasts, nor did he know how to hide his tracks. He did not know how to set up traps, nor did he have the cooperation of other hunters. He did not even have a hunting dog. If such a person said he wanted to hunt, any hunter would laugh. However, he was not in a hurry. He sat on a wooden stake in the mountain and meditated until dusk. Just now, he opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Little Anne." A gust of cold wind swept through the forest. After a while, it blew back. Li Qingshan stood up and walked through the forest. Not long after, he found a deer that had fallen to the ground. There was not a single wound on its body. After Little Anne's strength increased, his own yin qi also became heavier. He discovered that the deer only needed to pounce on him before it immediately fell unconscious and died on the ground. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "I have Little Anne with me. Naturally, I don't need to learn any hunting skills. It's a waste of time. They actually look down on me. Let's catch a few more prey and show them." Ever since the Mid-Autumn Festival, Li Qingshan was no longer as indulgent towards Little Anne. Instead, he had more control over him. Now, he did not hold back when he used him. Naturally, he did not need to be so courteous towards people he was close to. Little Anne nodded excitedly and rushed into the forest like the wind. Although the beasts in the forest were vigilant, they could not be wary of this invisible little demon. They all fell to the ground, waiting for Li Qingshan to pick them up. Li Qingshan was idle and bored, so he began to practice his archery. He shot the startled birds in the forest. Shooting moving things was indeed much more difficult. Out of every 3 arrows, 2 would miss. However, as he gradually got used to it, the number of missed shots decreased. At dawn, in the Drawn Rains village, a few hunters brought the hunters down the mountain. The large group of people and horses were still in the mountains to hunt together. In an open space in the middle of the village, the highly respected Grandpa Zhang was in charge of counting the prey. A smile appeared on his stern face. "The harvest is not bad. It's a good sign." Then, the women and children who stayed behind in the village handled the prey, tanned the leather, and marinated the meat. "That Li Qingshan hasn't returned yet?" There were already people who could not wait to see Li Qingshan make a fool of himself. He went into the mountains to hunt alone. How could he return so quickly? Before the voice had died away, someone shouted, "Li Qingshan is back." What is that?" The few people looked in the direction of the voice. The first thing they saw was not a person, but a bunch of furry monsters, like the legendary savages. Li Qingshan bent over, carrying deer, elk, and so on. There were quite a few large prey that weighed several hundred kilograms. His waist was covered in pheasants and hares. Along the way down the mountain, even he was covered in sweat. He said with difficulty, "Oi, Shaowen, isn't this a little too much? It's heavy." Chapter 30. With a boom, Li Qingshan placed all of the prey before Grandpa Zong. "This should be enough to make up for my rations in the village during this period of time." There was a series of gulps in the surroundings. In particular, the hunters who had just left the mountain were completely dumbfounded. Their entire group had worked together and prepared meticulously, yet the prey they had hunted was actually less than Li Qingshan alone. Grandpa Zong discovered that many of the prey did not have any wounds at all. "How did you hunt?" This was the question that everyone present wanted to ask. Li Qingshan thought about it and replied, "I caught them with my hands." Everyone collapsed in laughter, but they could not even bring themselves to question him. Li Qingshan glanced at the prey the hunters had brought down the mountain. "You've hunted so much already. You're almost catching up to me." "No, I need to work harder as well, or I won't be able to win." Grandpa Zong was unable to explain to him that the prey had to be split among the hunters. On average, each hunter would not even get a single prey. On the first day of hunting, Li Qingshan had basically already won. Li Qingshan ate a mouthful of food before going back up the mountain. The hunters returned to the northern mountain in a daze and told him about what had happened in the village. "How's that possible? You must have been drinking in the village." "It's true. There really was this much prey," they explained in a hurry. "That kid." Huang Binggu exhaled deeply and called out, "Let's all work harder. Don't fall behind him. If all of us together aren't as good as him alone, then we can all go slit our throats." The hunters answered loudly, and their morale skyrocketed. Huang Binggu silently suppressed his coughing fit. He looked at his palm and saw a patch of dark red blood. On the mountain path, a group of people traveled slowly. In the center was a small sedan chair, carried by 4 porters and surrounded by over a dozen servants. A chubby hand lifted the curtain of the sedan chair, revealing a chubby face. He asked, "Advisor, how far are we from Qingyang City?" It was clearly late autumn, but he was still covered in sweat as he sat in the sedan chair. A butler said, "Sir, it's still far away. It'll be good enough if we can get there tonight." The fat official put down the curtain of the sedan chair and muttered, "I have great knowledge of managing the affairs of the world, but you actually want me to go to such a remote place to be a county magistrate?" The magistrate is really confused. "Milord, you shouldn't speak carelessly. It wouldn't be good if the prefectural magistrate heard about it." The fat lord snorted twice and said no more. At this moment, the mountain wind suddenly blew, startling countless forest birds. A woo! A roar came from the dense forest beside the mountain path. The sedan chair fell to the ground with a thud, and the fat official's eyes and mouth became crooked. What's going on? Is someone trying to murder me?" "See. Sir, it's old tiger." The advisor fell to the ground and pointed forward with a trembling finger. A brightly colored ferocious tiger leaped down from the slope and landed on the mountain path. It stared at the palanquin covetously. The word, "King," on its forehead looked very majestic. "Who, tiger, what, it's a tiger. Quick, someone come and take down this beast for me." The advisor was about to cry. They've all run away." The fat official lifted the curtain of the sedan chair to take a look. As expected, all the bearers, servants in the surroundings had all run away. When they heard the tiger's roar, they reacted. The working people at the bottom were still very vigilant. The ancients said, "The mention of a tiger makes one pale." In this era, there wasn't a single commoner who wasn't afraid of tigers. Ferocious tigers eating humans was also a very common thing. "Advisor, you're really loyal. You didn't let down my great kindness." The fat official was moved. The advisor instinctively said, "Thank you for your praise, sir. Even if this lowly one's body is torn to pieces, it's hard for me to repay you." He cursed in his heart, "Fuck, I can't walk. Hold on, I'll go get reinforcements." The fat official nimbly crawled out of the sedan chair and wanted to escape. The advisor hugged the fat official's leg. "Sir, don't leave this lowly one behind." Seeing this lump of fat, the ferocious tiger's eyes seemed to light up. Just as it was about to pounce, its ears suddenly twitched, and it shrank its body to face the forest. The vegetation in the forest swayed and rustled. It was getting closer and closer, and its momentum was even greater than the ferocious tiger's appearance just now. What is this?" the advisor mumbled. A figure leaped out of the forest. It was a youth. His young face couldn't be considered handsome, but it was full of vigor. He landed on the mountain path nimbly. His face was that of a ferocious tiger, and he bared his teeth with a smile. What a rare and good prey! The ferocious tiger seemed to know that the person coming was not easy to deal with. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws to threaten him, but it was useless. Its body shook, and it pounced forward with a roar. Li Qingshan's foot landed firmly on the ground, and his hands grabbed the tiger's 2 claws. The tiger's mouth, which was full of fangs, was right in front of him, and a fishy smell hit his face. He shouted in a deep voice, and his vital energy surged. He exerted force in his arms and flipped the ferocious tiger, which weighed several hundred kilograms, onto the ground. He pounced on the tiger's back. He had never dealt with a tiger before. He had only seen Wusong fight a tiger in Water Margin, so he copied him. He grabbed the tiger's back and punched it randomly. The ferocious tiger roared out in pain and bent its body violently. Li Qingshan was sent flying. He thought, reality really is different from what's written in books. The true qi in his body sank, and he landed firmly on the ground. He was about to deal with it carefully. However, the ferocious tiger glanced at him and let out a growl before turning around and fleeing. The fat official and the advisor were both stunned by what had happened just now. Only now did they return to their senses, and they were overjoyed. "Young hero, warrior, I am the district magistrate of Qingyang. If you chase away this tiger, I will reward you handsomely." However, Li Qingshan did not even look at them. He yelled out, "Where do you think you're going?" He strode over and grabbed the tiger's tail that was like a steel whip. However, the tail was slippery, so it was difficult to grab. How could Li Qingshan let go of such a great prey before him? He chased after the tiger. The fat official and the advisor only returned to their senses after quite a while. They looked at one another. The autumn hunt ended, and the Drawn Reins village was filled with a joyous atmosphere. Li Qingshan returned to the village as well. He was covered in many wounds, such that he seemed to be in a rather sorry shape. However, when everyone saw him, they all revealed expressions of respect. It was not because of his wounds, but because of the prey on his shoulder. He was carrying an adult tiger on his shoulder. He had only chased after the tiger for a day and a night in the forest. He had only managed to make it through the endurance granted to him by the ox demon's fist of great strength. If it were not for Little and helping to track him at night, he would have almost lost him several times. However, even Little and was unable to approach the king of the mountains. Ferocious tigers possessed an innate dignity that could subdue ghosts. As a matter of fact, tiger demons that had developed into demons could even turn the people they ate into demons. The children in the village ran around Li Qingshan. Their eyes were filled with admiration. Huang Binggu personally went out to receive him before declaring him first. No one in the village dared to defy him. Not only were tigers extremely terrifying wild beasts to regular people, but to hunters as well. Regular hunting bows could not kill tigers at all. Instead, it would incite the tiger's ferocity. Using a hunting knife to fight a tiger in close combat would only lead to death. Li Qingshan had killed the tiger, so he seemed to possess the might of a tiger. "I don't have anything valuable on me," I'll use this stone splitter bough as a reward for the autumn hunt. Huang Binggu suddenly removed the large bough from his back. Chapter 31. Hunting Chief, you mustn't do that. The other hunters tried to dissuade him in a hurry. Li Qingshan was surprised as well. Huang Binggu actually wanted to give his personal bow to him. The meaning behind this was not just a bow. He turned him down. Hunting Chief, a gentleman doesn't take what others like. I can't accept this wager, so just treat it as a joke. Huang Binggu stroked the bough gently and said to himself, this stone splitter bough has been with me for many years, so it's quite convenient to use. It's also helped me make a name for myself in the Jianghu. Now that I don't have much time left, I'd like to choose a good master for it. I heard you found Grandpa Zhang's bow too light. This stone splitter bow is an iron bow with a strength of 3 stones. Even regular practitioners of martial arts can't use it. Here, don't dilly-dally. Huang Binggu pushed the stone splitter bow to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan gripped the bow and felt a heaviness in his hand. He recalled Huang Binggu's elegance when he stood on the rock and killed people like he was slaughtering dogs. Yes, this bow was not suited for hunting. It was more suited for fighting on the battlefield. It was a true weapon for killing. He fiddled with the bowstring with his fingers. There were metal threads mixed in, so they were extremely sharp. Regular people had to wear rings to use it, but with the ox demon forges its hide, he did not mind. Huang Binggu seemed to want to entrust his son to him. He did not say it explicitly, but everyone present could tell. However, no one objected. Not only was this because of Huang Binggu's might, but Li Qingshan had also proven his strength before everyone. There was no need to ask whether Li Qingshan had the ability to lead, or whether the villagers were convinced. Obeying the strong was a human instinct, just like a pack of wolves. The Drawn Reins village was a pack of wolves. Huang Binggu wanted Li Qingshan to replace him as the Wolf King. This was a decision he had made after a long period of consideration. The Drawn Reins village had always been disliked by the government, and they had become sworn enemies with the Ginseng King village. They seemed impressive, but they were actually surrounded by danger. There were talented people in the village, but none of them could control the situation. Only Li Qingshan could do this. Li Qingshan held the stone splitter bow and felt like he was dreaming. A few months ago, he was still the most inconspicuous, lowly cowherd in the village. A few months later, he had the opportunity to become the renowned hunting chief of the Drawn Reins village, but he did not accept it. Hunting chief, I'll accept this bow. Thank you for your kindness, but I've actually come to bid you farewell today. With that, there was an uproar. Everyone felt like Li Qingshan did not know how to appreciate his kindness. Even though Huang Binggu understood Li Qingshan's strength and potential, his expression was rather ugly after being rejected in front of so many people. Huang, but I want it for myself. Li Qingshan returned to his room and took out a small bottle of alcohol, passing it to Huang Binggu. This is the medicinal alcohol my master left behind in the past. It might be able to cure your illness. You from Tian Ti 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 Ti. Li Tut, Ti 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 Ti. Li Qingshan smiled and said, there's no harm in trying. This was the spiritual wine brewed from the spiritual ginseng. Although he was not skilled in medicine, he had some understanding of Huang Binggu's illness. He had been born with a weak body, and his many years of practicing martial arts had exhausted his origin, so he had to rely on his inner strength to support himself. This was an incurable disease that even a divine doctor would find difficult to cure. This was a congenital defect that no one could cure. However, the spirit ginseng had an innate qi that could save his life. Huang Binggu drank the spiritual wine in one gulp, then sat down to meditate. After a short while, wisps of white qi emitted from the top of his head, and his originally sallow complexion regained its ruddiness. After a long time, he opened his eyes. Chief Hunter, what do you think? The hunters asked one after another. Huang Binggu touched his chest in disbelief. I feel much better. It was not just much better, it was better than ever. It was as if he had returned to his youth. There was a burst of cheers, and many of the hunters shed tears. Many of the people who had originally been hostile towards Li Qingshan all changed their attitudes, holding his hands and thanking him profusely. Li Qingshan raised the stone splitter bow. Then it would be impolite of me to refuse this bow. Huang Binggu's expression darkened slightly. Then, Qingshan, can we change the wager? Having escaped from death, he was immediately reluctant to part with this old companion. Don't even think about it. Li Qingshan refused firmly. The words of a man of the mountains are like the mountains. How can I repent so easily? All right then. Huang Binggu's expression was bitter, which led to a burst of laughter from the people around him. Very rarely did they see their chief hunter act like this. Qingshan, are you going to come back? I'm just going to Crouching Ox Village to take a look. There are still some things I haven't tidied up yet, and I want to find a quiet place to practice my martial arts and see if I can make a breakthrough. Over the past few days of drinking spiritual alcohol, Li Qingshan felt that he had already touched upon the crux of the ox demon's fist of great strength. He planned on cultivating alone and achieving the strength of an ox. By then, he would no longer have to remain trapped in the mountains and forests. He could go out and see the outside world. He remembered that the fatty he saved yesterday seemed to have called himself some Qingyang district magistrate. He wanted to fulfill his promise with Little Anne. Although he had no idea how far south Little Anne pointed to was, he still had to take the first step. Another breakthrough? Huang Binggu had sensed long ago that the current Li Qingshan had changed again compared to a few days ago. His entire being had undergone a drastic change. This rate of improvement was basically shocking. Yet in the blink of an eye, he said he wanted to make another breakthrough. He could not help but think of how Li Qingshan had once said he wanted to become an innate master. Back then, he had only thought of it as a passing thought. Now, he suddenly felt that perhaps he really could achieve it. But what about the prey you've hunted? Li Qingshan's harvest over the past few days had almost caught up to the entire village's harvest. I don't want anything else. I just want the tiger bones from that tiger. Also, I want you to collect some tiger bones for me. I want to make some medicinal alcohol. I'll buy them at market price. The reason why he chased after the tiger relentlessly was not just because he wanted to show off in the village. Instead, it was because Oxen had told him that once he achieved the strength of an ox with the ox demon's fist of great strength, he could begin practicing the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. He needed to use another type of medicinal alcohol. The most important ingredient was like ginseng, precious but not uncommon. It was tiger bones. Hunters and tigers were mortal enemies. A single hunter would be afraid of a vicious tiger, but once a tiger became too aggressive, they would definitely search the mountain on a large scale, setting up many traps. Wild beasts were vicious, but they were still no match for humans. The number of tiger bones accumulated in the Drawn Reins village was probably not small. Huang Binggu said, "Is this the prescription your master left behind?" "Yes." "Are you saying that just because you're generous, the men of my Drawn Reins village are petty?" "I can help you make the medicinal alcohol, but can you let us use those 2 prescriptions as well?" Huang Binggu secretly tried out Li Qingshan's prescription. The medicinal alcohol made was indeed much better than the medicinal alcohol used in the village. Furthermore, there was no need to buy the ingredients from outsiders. Their village could gather them all. If they used it to nurture their disciples, it would not take long for the strength of Drawn Reins village to rise to another level. Li Qingshan had no objections. Those 2 prescriptions were just temporary items. There was nothing particularly precious about them, so there was no harm in giving them to others. Furthermore, he could save himself the trouble of making the medicinal alcohol. It was the best of both worlds. He handed the prescriptions to Huang Binggu, then took the stone splitter bow, mounted Oxen, and slowly left. It was only when Li Qingshan's figure disappeared around the corner of a mountain path that Grandpa Zhang whispered to Huang Binggu, "Hunting chief, why didn't you stop him just now? The spiritual ginseng is most likely on him. The alcohol you drank was most likely made from the spiritual ginseng, and the spiritual ginseng is most likely in the gourd at his waist." Li Qingshan had never mentioned the matter of the spiritual ginseng, but in the eyes of this experienced old hunter, he had already revealed too many clues. To Huang Binggu, who had once walked the Jianghu, these things could only be seen and understood even more clearly. Huang Binggu gazed at the mountain path that Li Qingshan had disappeared into. After a long silence, he turned his head and said, "After all, we are different from those ginseng foragers, aren't we?" Chapter 32. Grandpa Zhang also showed some respect. Many mountain villages were like Ginseng King village, and hunter villages were even more so. After all, it was much easier to be a hunter than to hunt beasts. If they encountered a lone traveler, they could kill him with one arrow and take the item. It was simply too easy. Ever since Huang Binggu had led Drawn Rain's village, he had strictly restricted the villagers. This had never happened before. On the mountain path, Oxen said to Li Qingshan, "You gave that bottle of spiritual wine. At least 2 people have seen through the matter of the spiritual ginseng." Li Qingshan said, "I know. It's very possible that they will attack and make you stay in Drawn Rain's village forever." "I know that too." Li Qingshan had lived 2 lives and was not a naive teenager. He knew of the many dark sides of human nature. "But I'm willing to take this risk. In life, if I'm always careful and don't believe in others or myself, then what's the point of mastering a peerless technique?" He had some measure of his own strength and was confident that even in the worst-case scenario, he would be able to kill his way out. Furthermore, he believed that his own strength would have the effect of intimidating others. On one hand, he warmly invites me while on the other, he silently presses on his sword. Does this count as becoming mature? Li Qingshan sighed in his heart as he caressed the locust wood tablet on his waist that had the 2 words, Nan and carved on it. However, there were still people in the world that he could wholeheartedly trust. Ghosts. They slowly walked along the rugged mountain path. The red, yellow, and green maple trees were like fire along the way. It was very beautiful. Li Qingshan took out his bamboo flute again and began to play it. The clear sound of the flute echoed through the autumn mountains. "Still can't find it?" The young man who was called Young Master by the swordsman asked somewhat anxiously. He had already led people to search Bailao Peak for many days and had even expanded the search area, but there was no sign of the spiritual ginseng. "Young Master, we've already brought people to Flatten Ginseng King village. The spiritual ginseng is definitely not there. They said that it must have been taken by Drawn Rain's village. Should we flatten Drawn Rain's village while we're at it?" A swordsman asked. They have great enmity with the Drawn Rain's village, so of course they would say that. They think I don't know that the Drawn Rain's village withdrew from the mountain on the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, and then went to the north for the autumn hunt. Drawn Rain's village isn't like those country bumpkins from Ginseng King village. Huang Binggu's archery skills were famous in Jianghu back then. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't provoke him. No one in Jianghu dared to underestimate a strong bow or crossbow. Even a first-rate master would be at a disadvantage if the arrows were fired randomly. Young Master is wise. Looks like we can only wait until the next full moon. The young master felt a little proud. Suddenly, his ears twitched. What's that sound? It sounds like a flute. Siren? The closest villages to here are the Ginseng King and the Raining Horse. Let's go take a look. Oxen suddenly stopped in his tracks. Li Qingshan also saw more than 10 silhouettes lightly stepping on the treetops and rocks as they flew over from afar. Each of them had a sword on their back, and their posture was incomparably elegant. Is this light body technique? Li Qingshan exclaimed. He immediately thought of the person Little and had mentioned and raised his guard. However, this place should be quite a distance away from Bai Lao Peak. The young master was the first to arrive in front of Li Qingshan. His subordinates behind him loudly praised, "Young master has great light body technique." Li Qingshan saw that the young master had red lips, white teeth, and a handsome face. After being praised by his subordinates, his face was filled with an arrogant smile. Other than the calluses on his sword-wielding hands, he looked like a rich young master. He sized up the young master, but the young master didn't look at him. He glanced at him lightly and asked, "Are you from Drawn Rain's village?" Li Qingshan replied, "That's right." "If not, then who are you? Who are you to ask for our young master's name?" A tall and skinny swordsman with a pale complexion saw that Li Qingshan was still sitting casually on the cow. His sword flashed, and he used, "Immortal Guides the Way," to stab towards his face. "Get down here." He wanted to scare him off the cow and make a fool of himself. Li Qingshan's face turned cold. He slightly tilted his body, and when the sword was about to reach its end, his eyes flashed. He quickly stretched out his hand and grabbed the blade of the sword. The tall and skinny swordsman coldly snorted in his heart, "You actually dare to grab my sword. This is a fine steel treasure sword given by my sect. I only need to turn the blade of the sword and I will chop off your hand." However, when he used his strength to turn the sword, not only did he not achieve his goal, he instead twisted the fine steel treasure sword like a fried dough twist. The blade of the sword remained unmoved in Li Qingshan's hand. Even with the strength of his arm, he couldn't even match the strength of a few of Li Qingshan's fingers. Li Qingshan was enraged. There was no grudge between them, yet they wanted him to be crippled for life. These people of the pugilistic world were too vicious. Bang! With a pang sound, the blade of the sword was broken. The tall and skinny swordsman's complexion turned pale. His sword was unexpectedly broken by an unknown brat. How could he endure this? He wanted to forcefully attack with his broken sword. The young master reprimanded him, "Chi-da, get down. You are not skilled enough. Don't embarrass our Dragon's Gate sword sect. Yes, this subordinate deserves to die. When we return, I will go to the disciplinary hall to receive my punishment." The tall and skinny swordsman named Chi-da did not dare to disobey. He retreated, but he looked at Li Qingshan with incomparable malice. The young master said with interest, "I did not expect to meet an external expert deep in the mountains. You are qualified to know this young master's name. Listen well, I am the Dragon's Gate Sword Sect's Yang Jun." Li Qingshan shook his head, "Never heard of you before. Country bumpkin, you are ignorant and inexperienced. The sword of our Dragon's Gate Sword Sect cannot be broken by others. I will not make things difficult for you. Leave behind a hand. Which hand do you want?" The rage in Li Qingshan's chest surged. He wished that he could kill Yang Jun with one strike. Originally, he thought that even if a person who practiced martial arts could not be chivalrous, he would still be somewhat cultured. From the looks of it, he was very wrong. The good and evil of human nature all depended on a single thought. When a person had the power to toy with the lives of others, how many people could maintain their so-called humanity, not taking and doing whatever they wanted? However, this group of people could not be compared to the ginseng foragers who practiced shallow martial arts. They were true practitioners of martial arts. The ox demon forges its hide could block fists, but it could not block fine steel swords infused with inner chi. Furthermore, they all possessed movement techniques. Even if they managed to escape, it would not be easy. Yang Jun said, "Though, seeing how you're so young, your talent is quite good to be able to practice external martial arts to such a level. Crippling you like this is quite a pity. Why don't you become my servant?" This was his true objective, as most people who practiced external martial arts were straightforward and honest. They did not have as many thoughts as people who practiced internal martial arts. In other words, their muscles grew into their brains. As a result, many masters of the Jianghu had powerful external martial artists as servants. He had always wanted to be cultured and recruit someone like that. When he saw Li Qingshan, he beamed inside. Wasn't this exactly what he was looking for? If he beat him up now, all he needed to do was give him some benefits in the future, and he would be able to raise a loyal dog. Young master, you mustn't. Cheetah tried to dissuade him in a hurry. If this kid really became the young master's servant, his status would rise. Yang Jun shot him a glance, and he immediately shut up. Another swordsman said, "Why don't you hurry up and agree? Our Dragon's Gate sword sect is renowned throughout Qingyang City. Even becoming a servant disciple is difficult. Now that the young master is promoting you, you'll reach the top in a single step. I, Li Qingshan, will not become anyone's servant." Li Qingshan emphasized each word. He came from a different world. He had the same love and hatred as the people of this world, but there was one thing that was different. He had no loyalty. He would not be loyal to anyone, no matter how benevolent, noble, or terrifyingly powerful the person was. Chapter 33. If it were a one-on-one battle, the current Li Qingshan was confident he could defeat or even kill Yang Jun within 10 moves. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Yang Jun was just about to issue an order to capture Li Qingshan. Even if the Drawn Rains village was not to be trifled with, there was no need to worry about the news of him being destroyed in the depths of the mountains. Li Qingshan's body tensed up as well. He planned on capturing the ringleader first. He would deal with the blow and capture Yang Jun first. Suddenly, someone said, "Young master, he seems to be carrying the stone splitter bow on his back." What? The stone splitter bow? Yang Jun stopped and studied the great bow on Li Qingshan's back. He had some understanding towards the weapons of famed figures near Qingyang City. "Where did you get this bow from?" "The hunting chief obviously gave it to me," said Li Qingshan. Yang Jun's expression wavered. He had been influenced by what he saw and heard in the sect, so he knew everything he needed to know. The person who could obtain this weapon was probably Huang Binggu's successor, the next hunting chief of the Drawn Rains village. If someone like that died, the Drawn Rains village would never just let the matter rest. They would be able to find out about their activities in the region without any effort at all. If they really did everything they could for revenge, the hidden arrows and traps would be difficult to deal with. He could not provoke trouble like this over a moment of anger. He swung his hand. "Kid, don't let me run into you again." In the blink of an eye, they all vanished. Only Li Qingshan remained on the mountain path. He could not read minds, but he could guess that they feared the Drawn Rains village. When strangers saw you, they would never see you as a person. Instead, they would see your influence, power, and wealth. Li Qingshan had reached the level of a third-rate master, but he had relied on the bow on his back to escape danger. He was furious. He thought to himself, "If I don't get my revenge, I'm not human. I, Li Qingshan, will never allow anyone to bully me, nor will I rely on someone else's reputation to live." Originally, he didn't quite agree with Oxen's theory that a man should be more broad-minded. But now, he realized that a lot of deadly feuds were formed because of a single glare, and they wouldn't stop until one of them died. After over a month, Li Qingshan returned to Crouching Ox Village once again. Before he even stepped through the door, he heard something inside. "Is there a thief? It's also because I live in a remote place. I'd like to see which petty thief dares to steal from me." The anger in his heart had not yet subsided. He quickly walked in and grabbed the man. The man turned around in pain. Their eyes met, and both of them were stunned. "Li Fugue. Erlang. What are you doing in my house? Erlang, you're not dead." Li Qingshan looked at the room. Although it had been more than a month, it was still spotless. He knew that Li Fugue was not stealing, but helping him clean the room. "Of course I'm not dead. Why do you say that?" Only after asking around did he find out that Li Qingshan had returned from Cypress Stream village without any news. Everyone in the village had seen him get into a conflict with the people of the Drawn Rains village at the market, so they all thought that he was done for. Li Fugue even helped him burn some joss paper and cried. Li Qingshan did not know whether to laugh or cry. "I'm alive and well, aren't I? Hunter Huang of the Drawn Rains village invited me to the village as a guest, so I stayed for a while longer." Li Fugue never thought that he would actually be able to come out alive after entering a dangerous place like the Drawn Rains village. As for the fact that Hunter Huang had invited him over as a guest, he did not really believe it. In his eyes, although Li Qingshan was powerful, he was still nowhere close to someone like Huang Binggu. He did not know what to say either. He only muttered, "That's good. That's good." It did make Li Qingshan feel rather touched. He had not helped the wrong person back then. However, Li Fugue's expression suddenly became worried. "You should leave quickly. Don't let the villagers know." "What now?" "The eldest son of the village head's family has returned. He says he wants to make trouble for you." Li Long, village head Li's eldest son, as well as Li Qingshan and Li Bao's elder brother. The name was not unfamiliar to Li Qingshan. Instead, the villagers had almost grown calluses from hearing it. Originally, Li Long was only a few years older than him. However, it was said that when he was playing outside when he was young, he caught the eye of a noble and was taken to Qingyang City to learn martial arts. He would only return home during festivals and festivals. He had seen Li Qingshan, the cowherd, a few times, but he had never even spoken to him. In the eyes of the villagers, he was an important figure who had emerged from the Crouching Ox village and arrived in Qingyang City. He had made a name for himself. Every single family had a daughter, and they all hoped to marry her off to him. Together with caretaker Lu's son, little caretaker Lu, they were known as the two talents of the Crouching Ox. Of course, with the sudden rise of Li Qingshan, perhaps they should be known as the three talents of the Crouching Ox. However, Li Qingshan had never seen the world. He had never set foot in Qingyang City, so it was rather difficult for him to become the third talent. Li Qingshan said, "You think I'm afraid of him?" Not only was he not afraid, but he even wanted to see for himself. He ignored Li Fugue's advice and made his way to village head Li's home. In village head Li's home, a young man with a buzz cut lectured village head Li, "Just anyone is bold enough to bully us. You really are regressing the more you live." Then he pointed at Li Hu and Li Bao. "You two are grown men, yet you allow him to bully you all the way to your doorstep." He had basically grown up in Qingyang City, so his horizons and experience were extremely abundant. He had already begun to treat himself as a Qingyang citizen. Right now, he viewed the matters of the village from the perspective of a city dweller. He felt a natural sense of disdain, not just towards Li Qingshan, but towards everything in the Crouching Ox village. He was not young, but he had never married. His family had once tried to find a partner for him in a hurry, but he rejected all of them. Right now, he was no longer someone that village girls could match. Village head Li, who was awe-inspiring in the village, only said meekly, "Don't be angry, my son. He's already dead anyway. He's seeking his own death by provoking the Drawn Rains village. There's no need for me to go through the trouble of teaching him a lesson." Li Hu shrunk his neck in meekly, but Li Bao said, "Big brother, you won't let us join the Iron Fist and learn martial arts, so of course we'll be bullied in the village." Li Long shot a glance at him. "That's because you don't have enough talent. Li Qingshan's not dead. Li Qingshan's back." At this moment, someone suddenly called out from outside. Li Long suddenly stood up. If this news only kicked up a commotion in the peaceful village, then Li Qingshan has gone to village head Li's home. Would kick up a great commotion, drawing the entire village to move out once more. They wanted to see the battle between the first and third prodigies of the Crouching Ox village. Under the scorching sun, Li Qingshan and Li Long stared at each other. The villagers all held their breaths, as if they were afraid of startling them. Li Hu and Li Bao stood beside Li Long, boosting his momentum. Li Long waved his hand, dismissing the two of them. Li Erlang, it's been so long. You've grown so big already. This was completely the tone of a senior speaking to a junior. However, the villagers all believed he had the right to speak like that, so they discussed quietly. Erlang's in big trouble now. Yeah. Li Long can't be compared to patch-haired Lu and those scoundrels. Chapter 34. Even though Huang Binggu had a sickly body, the feeling he gave off was that of a tiger's bones standing tall and mighty. He was extremely dangerous. Furthermore, in their last exchange, Huang Binggu had made a tactical error. He wanted to fight him head-on, using his weakest point to attack his strongest point. Of course, he would not have won. Otherwise, even if he did not use archery, as long as he had a weapon in his hand, he would not have been able to defeat him. Li Long said, "I heard you wanted to see me." Li Long also had a good eye and thought, this Li Erlang's posture is calm and steady. One look and you can tell he's trained in martial arts. He doesn't seem like a normal brute, and his aura seems to be a bit like Master's. He immediately shook his head, finding this thought funny. What kind of person was his master? How could he be mentioned in the same breath as this kind of brat? You dared to humiliate my family when I wasn't home. You really don't know how the word death is written. Oh, then I'd like to learn. Before Li Qingshan finished speaking, Li Long gave a loud roar and rushed forward to attack. With a metal tree piercing the clouds, he attacked Li Qingshan's chest. Cries of alarm came from all around. Li Fugue called out, "Erlang, be careful." Li Qingshan's body did not move. It was unknown if he could not dodge or if he was stunned. Li Long felt disdain in his heart. So he was just pretending. Just now, it seems I've misjudged him. With a muffled bang, the fist landed on Li Qingshan's body. Li Qingshan used the ox demon stomps the ground, his 2 feet seemingly rooted to the ground. He did not move at all. Seeing that we're from the same hometown, I'll let you have 3 punches. Li Long was stunned. Although he had only used 30% of his strength in this punch, there was no one in the same sect who dared to take it head-on. Now that it had been taken by an unknown brat, he was even more furious when he heard Li Qingshan's words. He actually dared to be so careless. In the blink of an eye, he sent out a second punch, using 70% of his strength. He thought, don't blame me for not showing mercy this time. His fist carried a fierce gust of wind as it landed on Li Qingshan's body. Li Qingshan shuddered and said, "You haven't used your full strength yet. Hurry up, this is the last move." Li Long stared at Li Qingshan as if he had seen a ghost, but he did not believe it. With a loud shout, he exerted all the power in his body, the muscles and tendons on his arms bulged, and suddenly they became a fist bigger, faintly revealing a greenish-black color, like black iron. In normal fights, even if it was a life-and-death struggle, he wouldn't dare to do this. He was afraid that he would use too many moves and expose his flaws. But now, he couldn't care less. He used all his strength to throw out his strongest and most ferocious punch. After taking the punch head-on, Li Qingshan's body swayed, and he finally took a step back. His face turned red, and the blood in his body surged. This punch still has some strength. 3 punches have passed. Now it's my turn. He raised his hand and punched. Iron chain crossing the river. The wind from the punch hit him in the face, and Li Long turned pale with fright. He crossed his arms, and used the strongest defensive move of the iron fist. Immediately after, he felt as if he had been hit by a raging bull. The iron bridge was washed away by the torrential flood, and his body flew out involuntarily. Even when he fell to the ground, he still couldn't believe it. I actually lost in 1 move. How could he have such great strength? Second punch. A black shadow suddenly blocked the sunlight, and shrouded his eyes. Li Qingshan was already in front of him. Li Long wanted to block, but his arms were in so much pain that he couldn't lift them. Li Qingshan's punch came from above, and landed on Li Long's stomach like a pile driver. Li Long instantly arched up like a shrimp, and spat out a mouthful of acid. Third punch. It went straight for Li Long's face. The villagers cried out in alarm. They were stunned by this sudden turn of events. The number one hero of the village, Li Long, whom they had been talking about for many years, was actually defeated in an instant. Moreover, he was defeated so thoroughly. The two brothers, Li Hu and Li Bao, couldn't believe that their big brother, whom they had always admired, was actually so vulnerable. Village Chief Li shouted at the top of his lungs, "Show mercy." The wind from the punch hit his face, but there was no sharp pain. Li Long slowly opened his eyes, only to see Li Qingshan's fist firmly stopping on his head. Only then did he realize that his whole body was covered in cold sweat. Just now, at that moment, he felt as if he was facing his invincible master, and he could only close his eyes and wait for death. Village Chief Li threw himself at Li Qingshan, and his skinny hand tightly grabbed his arm. "Erlang, Erlang, for the sake of your dead parents, let my Xiaolong go." "Dad, go away, let him come at me." Li Long struggled to get up. Li Qingshan said, "Seeing that you are somewhat filial, I will remember this punch." He was quite satisfied with the few punches he had just now, not because he was proud of his strength, but because of his strategy. Li Long had practiced martial arts for more than 10 years, and it was not in vain. His combat experience was above Li Qingshan's. If they really fought, the other party would not fight him head-on, and it would take a lot of effort to win. Therefore, he simply let him punch 3 times. Defending against such punches was what he was best at. Wherever Li Long's punches hit, he would focus his mind there, and the true qi in his body would also circulate there. After Li Long's 3 punches, not only was his mind injured, but his physical strength was also at its lowest. If he could not dodge, he could only block Li Qingshan's punches, and the result would be the same as just now. Li Long stood up with the help of Li Hu and Li Bao. "Are you really Li Erlang?" "That's impossible." He only had a very vague impression of Li Qingshan. Other than his somewhat eccentric personality, he was not an important person. Even according to his father's description, Li Qingshan was just a hot-blooded youth who was forced to suddenly burst out with ruthlessness. This kind of thing was not rare to him, but he never knew that he had such martial arts. It was as if a child in the mountains had gone out to work hard for many years and finally earned a family business. After achieving success and fame, he returned to his hometown in glory and enjoyed the worship of the villagers. But suddenly, an inconspicuous country boy appeared and was even richer than him. The disappointment in his heart could not be any greater, and after the disappointment came anger. "I am not Li Erlang, I am Li Qingshan." Since he no longer recognized that big brother, then Li Qingshan was not willing to be some Erlang. Li Long said fiercely, "Then do you know who I am?" "Of course I know." "Then do you know who my master is?" "Who?" "Obviously the master of Qingyang City's Iron Fist, known as the Iron Lion in the Jianghu, old hero Lu." Caretaker Lu suddenly stood out from the crowd and said with an extremely high and respectful tone. Li Qingshan frowned. "I've never heard of him." "What Iron Fist?" "Old hero Lu." They all sounded like third-rate goods, but he had forgotten that he himself was third-rate. "How ignorant. You haven't even heard of my master's name. Looks like you haven't heard of the 4 great masters of Qingyang, the dragon, the tiger, the lion, and the bear." Li Long called out. "Don't tell me that a dragon in there is you." Li Qingshan widened his eyes. This was the second time he had been accused of being ignorant today. All he knew was that in the wuxia novels of his past life, people who used animals as nicknames were all trash. Jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards were all useless. Only true masters who used directions as nicknames were nicknames, such as Eastern Heretic, Western Venom, Southern Emperor, and Northern Beggar. Of course not. Li Long almost laughed out of anger. In the government office of Qingyang City, the advisor held a small booklet and introduced the fat official one by one. Sir, apart from these local aristocrats and landlords, there are 4 other places and 4 people that you can't offend. The fat official said in irritation, I might as well not offend a single person in the entire Qingyang City. The advisor ignored his feelings. These 4 places are a sect, a village, and a stronghold. What do you mean by a sect, a village, and a stronghold? The sect is the Iron Fist, the sect is the Dragon's Gate sect, the village is the Drawn Reins village, and the stronghold is the Black Wind's stronghold. The dragon, the tiger, the lion, and the bear are the leaders of these places. Sir, if you offend these aristocrats, you'll be chased out of Qingyang City at most and lose your position as district magistrate. However, if you offend them, you might lose your life for no reason. Chapter 35. As it turned out, the group of people on the mountain path today were sent by the Dragon's Gate. The arrogant guy was the young master of the Dragon's Gate. No wonder he was so arrogant and despotic. Li Long said in surprise, you know, sickly tiger. Afterwards, he naturally saw the bow on Li Qingshan's back. As Huang Binggu rarely visited Qingyang City, he could not be certain that it was the stone splitter bow. Li Qingshan nodded and said nothing more. Li Long said, don't tell me your martial arts are also his, no, and it's none of your business. If you want revenge, feel free to come. Li Qingshan did not want to use Huang Binggu's name to intimidate others. Li Long's expression changed. He thought, this Li Qingshan's martial arts are already third-rate, so just what kind of person is his master? And he's connected to Huang Binggu. I only have a small dispute with him. Even if I kill him, what benefit will I get? It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Li Long made up his mind. Suddenly, his expression changed. He smiled slightly, although his smile was rather forced. Erlang, we're fellow villagers, so what kind of grievance is there for revenge? Li Qingshan was taken aback instead. Originally, he thought what would happen next would be him provoking the elders after beating up the young, forcing him into a corner like a swarm of bees. Afterwards, he would achieve a minor accomplishment in his abilities and kill them all. He never thought Li Long would actually be so fickle despite how reckless he seemed. Moreover, he was quite thick-skinned as well, actually changing his tune. He had basically witnessed the slippery side of the people of the Jianghu. Li Long smiled. And exchanging 3 punches for 2 punches, so I've profited. I can let you earn some more. Li Qingshan could tell that he originally wanted revenge. He had only changed his mind after hearing Huang Binggu's name. When he thought about how this was the second time he had to escape trouble like this today, he felt very mixed emotions. He hoped that one day, he could also be like Huang Binggu. No, he wanted to be even stronger than Huang Binggu. Even if it was 1,000 miles away, if someone heard his name, they would still feel deep veneration, not daring to act recklessly. Li Long smiled awkwardly. There's no need for that. Don't just stand there. Let's talk inside. Our Crouching Ox village has produced such a young hero. I just happen to want to get to know him better. Then, he cupped his fists in all directions. Fellow villagers, please go ahead. If I have the time, Li Long will visit each and every one of you. The villagers looked at one another. The outcome had truly exceeded their expectations, but since Li Long had asked them to leave, they dared not disobey. They just silently passed the title of the greatest hero of the Crouching Ox village to Li Qingshan. Since he had lowered himself so much, it was difficult for Li Qingshan to turn him down. Just like he had said, there was no particularly great grievance between them, and he also wanted to understand some information about Qingyang City, especially the Dragon's Gate sect. Under many gazes of respect, Li Qingshan was invited into village head Li's home. He was completely different from the nervousness he felt when he attended the banquet at caretaker Lu's home. He was relaxed and light-hearted. In the eyes of others, he possessed an air of arrogance. This was the change in mentality and bearing that came from his own strength. Qing Shan, with how impressive your martial arts are you interested in finding a job in Qingyang City? Our Iron Fist sincerely invites all the heroes of the world to gather. With your martial arts, my master will definitely like you. Li Long tried to rope him in right from the beginning. I'm skilled in martial arts. Can I join the Iron Fist just because I want to? Li Qingshan found this person's breadth of mind rather admirable, but little did he know that Li Long was conflicted inside. Although Li Qingshan had punched him twice, there was no great grievance between them. If he could rope him into the gang, he would be able to help each other out as fellow villagers, which would be beneficial to his status in the sect. Of course I need to be vouched for. Don't worry, I can vouch for you. Our Iron Fist is a great clan with a great business. Our influence is not limited to Qingyang City. Our headquarters is located in the Clear River Prefecture. As long as your fists are tough enough and your contributions are great enough, you won't have to worry about development. Women and silver will be at your fingertips too. Li Hu and Li Bao were both extremely envious. They could only blame their elder brother for not vouching for them, preventing them from enjoying the women and silver in the city. Yeah. My family's Lu Neng is a caretaker in old hero Lu's estate. He'll be able to look after you when the time comes. Caretaker Lu followed them in as well. He felt fortunate that he had not offended Li Qingshan too much in the past. Who would have thought that the cowherd from back then would become so powerful in just a few months? As Li Long said that, Li Qingshan gradually understood that although the Iron Fist accepted disciples, it was more like a gang, entrenched in the city. The Iron Lion, old hero Lu, should be a branch leader or a branch sect master. Li Qingshan said, "May I ask what rate old hero Lu's martial arts are in the Jianghu? If you ask someone else, they really might not be able to answer you. My master's Iron Fist has reached perfection. He can be described as a second-rate master. Then how do I compare to him?" This. Li Long never thought Li Qingshan would compare him to the peak of Qingyang right off the bat, and he was even comparing him to his master. He became rather displeased. "I'm not trying to boast, but while your martial arts are impressive, you're only at the peak of the third rate. You're nowhere near my master's opponent. Then what's the difference between second rate and third rate? My master once said that a person who has just grasped the rudiments of martial arts can take on 3 to 5 strong men. An expert of the Jianghu can take on 3 to 5 such people, and so on and so forth. Although it's not absolutely accurate, that's the general idea. Once it exceeds this number, it'll be difficult for 2 fists to take on 4 hands. However, this is only in terms of direct confrontation. If you use the method of sneak attacks, a first-rate expert who is proficient in Qinggong can kill dozens of second-rate experts. However, dozens of trained ordinary archers can also kill first-rate experts. Li Qingshan roughly understood his strength. Those ginseng foragers were originally people who had practiced martial arts. Back then, he could be regarded as an expert of the Jianghu, so although he won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. After some cultivation, he barely managed to reach the level of a third-rate master. Only after drinking the spiritual alcohol did he become a true third-rate master. Li Long's martial arts could be regarded as decent, but he was not a master. As a result, he was not his opponent at all. Apologies. I've already promised hunting Chief Huang of the Drawn Rains village that I'll join them. I'm afraid I can't accept your invitation. He could not help but think of a few months ago, when he could not even sleep peacefully in the cowshed. His brother and sister-in-law viewed him as a thorn in their side, wanting to chase him out no matter what. Yet now, people were inviting him everywhere. As expected, Li Long thought. He said in pity, the Drawn Rains village doesn't have much to offer. Out of the 4 places in Qingyang, our Iron Fist is the most at ease. They're all in the mountains, so how can they compare to us, who are so close to the bustling world? Whatever. Whenever you change your mind and come to Qingyang City, feel free to come to Iron Fist to find me. Just mention my name. Li Qingshan could not help but smile. Sure enough, there were not a lot of people who wandered the Jianghu for the sake of justice. He asked about many more things, and Li Long answered everything he knew. Seeing how he was so loyal, Li Qingshan was not a tactless person, so he showed some respect. "Brother Li, it's not a festival right now, so why have you returned?" Li Long suddenly lowered his voice. "Even if you didn't ask, I'd tell you anyway. I've returned this time for something major that threatens the Crouching Ox village. The Black Wind stronghold might treat the Crouching Ox village as a target to plunder." Chapter 36. Steward Lu stammered, "No. I don't think so. The Black Wind stronghold is very far from here. They've never been here before." He was the largest household in the village, so he was the first person the Black Wind stronghold came to look for. "I heard that the villages closer to the Black Wind stronghold have strengthened their defenses and built walls. That's why the bandits are so far away. It's almost winter, so they need to store food to get through the winter. Steward Lu, your granaries are all full, right? Don't tell me the government doesn't care." Only now did Li Qingshan learn that the mountain bandits also had an autumn hunt. For hunters, autumn was when the wild beasts were fat, but for the bandits, it was when the commoners who had just reaped the fruits of their labor were at their fattest. The government collects money every year, saying that they want to suppress the bandits, but they never do anything. Steward Lu said, Then what should we do?" "Nephew, why didn't you bring more people back?" Li Long glanced at him in annoyance. He was also willing to bring more people back, but he was only one of the sect master's disciples, not the leader of the Iron Fist. It was fine for his brothers to eat and drink with him, but it was impossible for them to fight the bandits of the Black Wind stronghold. However, it was all thanks to Steward Lu that he was able to become the Iron Lion's disciple. Because of this old friendship, it was not appropriate for him to reprimand him. He only said, "I alone am enough. This time, it definitely won't be the leader of the Black Wind stronghold himself. It's most likely one of the leaders. As long as I mention my master's name, he'll have to give me some face. However, I'll also need some people to keep up appearances." Qingshan. Li Long looked at Li Qingshan expectantly. With such an expert by his side, he felt a bit more confident. Li Qingshan deeply doubted this explanation. How could someone who had come all the way here just retreat after hearing his name? However, he would not let this small village that had raised him be trampled by others. He cupped his fists and said, "It's my duty." With his promise, Li Long also calmed down. With the help of a third-rate expert, this matter would be much more assured. This was also the key reason why he was willing to tolerate Li Qingshan to this extent. Village Chief Li and Steward Lu arranged for some workers and servants to make preparations. They also equipped some weapons. Although the news was still sealed, the atmosphere immediately became tense. Steward Lu said with a trembling voice, "Nephew, should we go into hiding?" Li Long said, "There's no need to avoid this. They're here to plunder. They won't commit murder or arson for no reason. But Steward Lu, I'm afraid you'll have to bleed a little this time." Steward Lu let out a long sigh. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a misfortune. If it was a misfortune, it couldn't be avoided. He could leave, but his family business couldn't. They waited quietly in the room. The two brothers, Li Hu and Li Bao, were still sweating from fright as they held their weapons. They constantly thought of the various terrifying rumors regarding the Black Wind Mountain. Li Long glanced at his brothers before glancing at Li Qingshan, who remained unfazed and resting with his eyes closed. He sighed inside. "If you had even half his courage, I'd be willing to take you into Qingyang City." Clang! 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 Before the sky had even darkened, a gong suddenly rang out from outside the village. It was a scout stationed outside the village, a clever and nimble junior chosen by Steward Lu. "They're here," Li Long said. Li Qingshan snapped open his eyes. How bold of these bandits to actually plunder in broad daylight. The gong suddenly stopped. They hurried to the entrance of the village and saw a cloud of dust approaching from afar. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived before them. There were several dozen people. Whether they were tall or short, fat or skinny, they all had vicious expressions. The person in the lead rode a pony that could travel on mountain roads. He actually held a bloody head in his hand. Xiao Lu. Steward Lu called out. The head belonged to the junior he had sent out to investigate, but it had actually been killed just like that. He became so frightened that his stomach and legs weakened. He looked at Li Long. Didn't you say they wouldn't kill people for no reason? Li Long's eyebrows furrowed. He said softly, they're trying to kill to establish their might. Afterwards, he clasped his fist and said loudly, I'm Li Long of the Iron Fist. May I ask which boss of the Black Wind stronghold has come? This is our third boss. If you're sensible, hand over your money and food. Don't make us waste our time, or we'll burn down your shitty village. A bandit called out, and the other bandits followed suit. They fiddled around with the weapons in their hands as they smiled scornfully. It was like they were looking at a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The third boss had a full beard and a fierce-looking face. He tossed the head to the ground and it rolled to Li Long's feet. Iron Fist, if the Iron Lion was here, I'd leave immediately without another word. Who do you think you are? When Li Hu and Li Bao saw the cloud of dust, they were so frightened that their faces turned ashen. Their legs trembled, and at this moment, they even weakened and fell to the ground. The bandits laughed loudly. The third boss is so impressive. Li Long's expression changed and he gasped. It was rumored that out of all the bosses of the Black Wind stronghold, the third boss was the most savage and temperamental. He would plunder and plunder without hesitation. In the eyes of the villagers near the stronghold, he was someone even more terrifying than the master of the Black Wind stronghold. However, since the third boss had asked him what he was, it proved that he was still fearful of the Iron Fist and asked about his relationship with the Iron Lion. The situation was out of his control, so he could only hold back his anger. I'm Master's final disciple. I knew you were coming, so I didn't want you to return empty-handed. I've given you a small gift, so please spare the Crouching Ox village for my master's sake. Caretaker Lu offered up an embroidered box with trembling hands. The third boss lashed out with his horsewhip, and the embroidered box flew into his hands, demonstrating his impressive martial arts. He opened the box, and it was filled with shiny silver. However, his face gradually darkened instead. 100 taels. Are you trying to send off a beggar? Be, great king, we've already done our best. Before nightfall, I want to see 1,000 taels of silver and 1,000 caddies of rations. Otherwise, When the third boss reached there, he suddenly licked his lips and smiled obscenely. My brothers also want to borrow a few women. Don't worry, we're not robbing them, we're just borrowing them. Once we're done, we'll return them to you next spring. The bandits all laughed obscenely. Any woman that can become the wife of our third boss would be lucky. When spring comes, perhaps that woman won't even want to return. Li Long knew the best. No woman could return from the Black Wind stronghold. They had all been raped to death. He said loudly, does the third boss really not care about the Iron Fist at all? Caretaker Lu was even more stunned by this number. He was stunned speechless. Don't make me wait too long. The third boss did not even look at Li Long. He turned his head and ordered his subordinates, hurry them up. The 20 or so bandits laughed as they walked around Li Long's group. They entered the village and knocked on every door. If anyone dared to open the door, they would break it down. Hundreds of villagers were chased out like sheep. They gathered together in fear. The barking of dogs and the wailing of women and children filled the air. The third boss laughed as he looked at this scene. Let's rest in this village tonight. This child is only 14 years old. He hasn't done anything bad in his life. Suddenly, an extremely calm voice sounded. It was so calm that it did not seem suitable for the current situation. However, within that calmness, there seemed to be an uncontrollable killing intent suppressed. Li Qingshan picked up Little Six's head from the ground and gently closed his eyes. The third boss narrowed his eyes. Who are you? He did not notice Li Qingshan. From the beginning, when the head was thrown, Li Qingshan's head was lowered and his body was trembling. He thought that it was fear. However, Li Qingshan was no longer trembling. He slowly said, "This is a very good and clever child. His parents also love him very much." The third boss yawned. What are you trying to say? Chapter 37. The bandits roared with laughter, as if they had heard a hilarious joke. However, the third boss sensed something terrifying from Li Qingshan's body and didn't laugh out loud. The head fell to the ground and the bowstring was fully drawn. Die! Li Qingshan attacked in an instant. His angry roar couldn't drown out the sound of the bowstring, and the arrow shot towards the third boss with his monstrous rage. A black light shot through the air, and the enormous force sent the third boss flying high into the air before he fell heavily to the ground. The power of the three-stone bow was astonishing, and Li Qingshan's movements were smooth. At such a close distance, only a second-rate expert or higher would be able to dodge it, but the third boss was clearly not one of them. The noisy village instantly quieted down. The bandits all stared with wide eyes, unable to believe this scene. The grand third boss had actually been killed by a teenager. The villagers looked at him as if he were a god. To them, the bandits were terrifying demons, and the third boss was the leader of these demons. Now that Li Qingshan had killed the third boss with one strike, he was like a god. The situation had reversed, but there was no joy on Li Long's face, only fear. Third boss. Third boss. A few bandits surrounded the third boss, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. With a fierce expression, he pointed at Li Qingshan and said, "Kill him." He could be considered a third-rate expert, so he reacted in an instant. Although he couldn't dodge the arrow, he avoided a vital point. The arrow pierced through his right shoulder, shattering all the bones nearby. His right hand could be considered crippled. His eyes were bloodshot, and he wanted nothing more than to skin Li Qingshan alive. The bandits reacted and picked up their swords, and halberds, roaring as they charged at Li Qingshan. A gust of wind blew behind his head as a short javelin stabbed towards the back of his head. Without turning his head, he slightly tilted his head and grabbed the javelin. He turned around and threw it. The javelin shot back with 10 times its original speed, nailing the attacking bandit to the door. A halberd, a goose-feather saber, and a red-tasseled spear all stabbed towards him at the same time. Li Qingshan grabbed the shaft of the spear and pulled hard. The two bandits lost their balance and fell towards him in fright. A pair of iron arms were already waiting for them and struck their chests like iron hammers. Muffled sounds were heard and the two bandits were sent flying while vomiting blood. Seizing this opportunity, the Yanling saber stabbed into Li Qingshan's chest. The ice-cold saber and sword touched his lower abdomen. It looked like the saber was about to pierce through Li Qingshan's body, but it was unable to move even an inch further. Li Qingshan's pair of iron palms struck the bandit's head with the force of 2 piercing winds. When he put down his hands, the bandit collapsed to the ground as if he had lost his soul. Blood slowly seeped out of his 7 orifices. He strode towards the third leader, but the battle cries behind him were already deafening. With a flick of his toes, he hooked the halberd and held it in his hand. There was no technique, no apprehension, just a sweep. The strong wind stirred up a semicircle of dust and rushed towards the mountain bandits. The tip of the halberd broke and flew up, piercing the ground. Several weapons flew up, followed by a series of blood-curdling screams. Some people tried to block, but they couldn't block the sweeping force of the halberd. Smoke and dust scattered in all directions. 4 bandits fell to the ground. Only a short bandit was swept across the face and died on the spot. The other 3 bandits all had their chests cut open and were screaming on the ground. Fresh blood sprayed on the ground as if it was worthless, and the rich color flowed everywhere. Li Qingshan glanced at the broken halberd and muttered, "What a poor weapon." He threw it to the ground. But he didn't know how many hard bones and steel he had forcibly swept through in that instant. How could a normal weapon withstand such an attack? In the blink of an eye, 8 bandits were dead or seriously injured. The bandits behind them screamed in fear and stopped. They held their weapons and didn't dare to move forward. They were stunned by this tragic scene. The originally ordinary youth seemed to have turned into a terrifying killing god in a flash. Li Qingshan continued to walk towards the 3rd boss. His face was expressionless, but his eyes flickered with a red light that even he himself didn't notice. However, his mind was rapidly analyzing the situation. He didn't let his anger get to his head. Only the 3rd boss could be considered a third-rate master here, so he heavily injured him as soon as he attacked, eliminating the greatest threat. There were a few masters among the other bandits, but most of them were at the level of the ginseng foragers. They had only practiced some martial arts and were enough to bully commoners, but they were definitely not his opponent. I'm going to die here. The 3rd boss propped himself up and moved backwards. He gazed at the approaching Li Qingshan in fear. He was like a humanoid demon from legends who would suddenly transform and bare his vicious fangs. No matter how many people were around him, they were unable to protect his safety. "If I die, the entire Crouching Ox village will die with me. Do you know who my eldest brother is?" Li Long's expression became even uglier. He went up and grabbed Li Qingshan. "Qingshan, don't be rash." The 3rd boss took the opportunity to climb onto his horse. He pulled on the reins and the horse galloped away. The other bandits didn't need him to say anything. They all followed him like a swarm of bees. They didn't even care about the injured bandits. Li Qingshan broke free from his restraints and grabbed Li Long's throat tightly. He lifted him up. "Do you want to die too?" Li Long said with difficulty, I can't kill the boss of the Black Wind stronghold. Have you heard of Elm Village?" Elm Village. Caretaker Lu, who had collapsed on the ground and was scared half to death, suddenly cried out involuntarily. "What Elm Village?" Li Qingshan relaxed his grip. "The people of Elm Village have always practiced martial arts. They're fierce and fierce. They once killed a boss of the Black Wind stronghold. However, not long after, the master of the Black Wind stronghold personally led 5 bosses and slaughtered over 100 people in the village, regardless of age or gender. They piled them up into a mountain of corpses. The master of the Black Wind stronghold personally led the bosses to offer sacrifices to their fallen brothers. Do you want something as tragic as that to happen in Crouching Ox Village? Then are we just going to let them trample over and humiliate us?" Li Qingshan growled. "Qingshan, I know how you feel, but the situation is stronger than you. Then let me become even stronger." The expressions of all the villagers changed. At this moment, they heard the 3rd boss leave behind an extremely vicious sentence from afar. "Your Crouching Ox village will be massacred." Some people fell to the ground in fright. Cries and wails rang out again. There was no joy from repelling the bandits at all. An injured bandit clutched his chest as he smiled cruelly. "You'll all be buried with me. Are you done?" Li Qingshan said. "What?" Li Qingshan released Li Long and kicked the goose feather blade beside his feet. The blade pierced the bandit's throat, and he immediately breathed his last. "I won't go back on my words." Li Qingshan finished off the other injured bandits one by one. He turned around and said to the villagers, "Nothing will happen. I promise." Afterwards, he strode off in the direction the bandits had fled in without even looking back. The sun set in the west, and the last ray of light vanished from the horizon. darkness descended on the mountains and land. Beside the roaring bonfire, 2 bandits helped the third boss pull out the arrow. The third boss cried out in pain and slapped one of the bandits away. "Can't you be a little more fucking gentle?" The bandit's mouth was covered in blood from the slap. He stuttered, afraid to talk back. The other bandits were all dejected. Under the Black Wind Stronghold's fame, it had already been a very long time since they had experienced a defeat like this. They had already grown used to gazes of fear and flattery, and they were used to taking silver and women as they pleased. "All of you, buck up. We'll definitely get our revenge. Once we capture that brat." The third boss smiled cruelly. "Cut him into 1,000 pieces." Immediately, another bandit agreed. Chapter 38. Who did it? Who did it? The third boss roared. Although he was injured, he still had his cultivation. Just who was it that could actually kill someone under the watchful eyes of so many bandits? Pooh! Another bandit's throat was slit and he fell to the ground. Just now, he was the first to agree with third boss that he wanted to cut Li Qingshan into 1,000 pieces. The dark forest seemed to hide a terrifying demon. A terrifying shadow instantly enveloped all the bandits. No one could see who did it. How did it happen? They didn't know if they would be the next to die. The fear of the unknown was the scariest. In the chaos, the third and fourth bandits fell to the ground. It was as if the scythe of the Grim Reaper was silently harvesting lives. The night wind was cold. An exquisite hunting knife, like a venomous snake, slithered through the tall withered grass. The blade was covered with dark grass juice, so it didn't reflect any light. Tonight, there was no moon. Li Qingshan stood in the dark forest on the hillside, watching everything. Only he could see little and holding the hunting knife, pacing back and forth among the bandits. His face was filled with anger. The words of these bandits had completely enraged him. His numb and withered heart for a long time burst forth with such strong emotions for the first time. He wanted to kill all these people. Li Qingshan saw that little and tried to get close to third boss several times, but was blocked. The blood energy of a third-rate master was already extremely strong, and could already restrain ghosts. The reason why little and could get close to him was because he used his own life energy to nourish him every day. Ah! Ah! 2 screams were heard, 2 more bandits died. The third boss was not a useless person, he shouted, "Everyone gather together, stick together." All the bandits gathered around him to ensure his safety. The blood energy and life energy gathered together like a huge flame. Even little and couldn't get close. Li Qingshan drank a mouthful of the spiritual wine in the gourd. Demon Ox's fist of great strength wasn't known for speed, nor did it have any so-called qinggong. He relied on the endurance of an ox and the replenishment of the spiritual wine to catch up. He replenished his vitality and raised the stone splitter bow. "Now, it's my turn to make a move." Pang! The pitch-black night sky was startled. Just from the sound alone, one could tell that it was an extremely powerful bowstring. The sound was short and elegant, carrying with it a sharp force that could cut through the air. The arrow whistled through the darkness in the distance, piercing through the chest of a bandit and nailing into the body of the bandit behind him. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The moment he heard the twang of the bowstring, the bandit had already been pierced. The bandits had been through quite a few battles, yet none of them could react in time. The third boss knew that this was because the arrow was faster than sound. The person who shot it was an expert. In all of Qingyang, there seemed to be only a single person who could shoot an arrow like that with a single bow. No, it's not that person. Otherwise, he would be dead by now. The third boss glanced at his injured right shoulder and remembered the brat who had forced him into this situation. Originally, he thought he had been careless, which was why he had fallen for the sneak attack. He never thought the brat's archery would be so terrifying. In reality, Li Qingshan's archery was not particularly accurate. Moreover, he had suddenly used a heavy bow like the stone splitter bow from such a great distance. However, the bandits were all gathered together, so there was no need for him to take aim. All he had to do was shoot at the center, and there was no reason for him to miss. Third boss, it's that brat from before. He's caught up. He's trying to kill us all. The arrow came from that direction. Let's fight it out with him. No, we can't. Once we separate, as they argued, the second arrow pierced the chest of another bandit. Every single bandit's face twisted in fear. They were so flustered that they were like a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The third boss ordered, "It's all that brat's doing. Let's charge up and kill him together." He led the bandits as they charged up the hill, yelling and shouting. Li Qingshan stood where he was without any hesitation, shooting arrow after arrow. An arrow shot out from the taut bowstring, whistling through the darkness. It pierced through 3 withered leaves as it spun, stabbing into the body of a bandit. Then, it pierced through layers of flesh until it was stuck in the bones. Just now, it unwillingly stopped moving. The immense impact of the arrow didn't even leave the bandit with a chance to cry out in agony. One of the bandits by the side halted his footsteps and looked over in horror. Before the fear in his eyes could dissipate, he felt a sharp pain in his head, and he lost consciousness. The interval between the arrows was actually so short. The bandits' charge came to a halt, and they hurriedly searched for cover. However, before they could even catch their breaths, the strange bloody marks once again appeared on their throats. They were even more accurate and terrifying than the arrows. Someone died at every moment. The morale that had been raised by fear vanished. Only when they returned to their senses did they discover that the third boss had already mounted a pony and galloped off towards the Black Wind's stronghold. They immediately scattered. Li Qingshan carried the stone splitter bow on his back and felt his arms ache slightly. The power of the 3-stone bow really was extraordinary. He had only fired a dozen or so arrows, and he found it rather difficult to continue. He sucked in a deep breath and took another sip of alcohol. "Little Anne, let's chase after them." In the Crouching Ox village, the villagers were still in a state of panic. Li Long was currently ordering people to collect the corpses. Long, how did you end up like this?" An old, dignified voice rang out in the darkness. Li Long shuddered. "Master, why have you come?" It was the master of the Iron Fist who had shaken up Qingyang City, the Iron Lion Lu Hong. "I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to subdue those bandits, so I came to take a look." Lu Hong emerged from the darkness. His eyes were like rings, and he radiated dignity even without being angry. He wore large, luxurious robes and seemed awe-inspiring, like a mighty lion. He glanced at the corpses of the bandits. "You've fallen out with the Black Wind stronghold." You didn't do it." "What a heavy blow. Tell me, what happened?" Li Long could only tell him everything in detail. When Lu Hong heard the third boss' actions, he snorted coldly. "How dare he look down on me and the Iron Fist like this? If I were here, I'd definitely kill him myself. I'd like to see whether that blind bear is bold enough to fall out with me or not." When he heard how Li Qingshan had struck out, he praised, "What boldness and skill. How old do you think this Li Qingshan is?" "Roughly 15. Li Long himself was rather surprised, so he could only say it out loud. Only now did he remember that Li Qingshan was only a teenager. "What? He's only 15. Lu Hong was shocked. He was a veteran of the Jianghu. Let alone 15-year-old third-rate masters, he had even seen first-rate masters before. However, behind these talented youths were all the shadows of large clans and sections. At the very least, they had a master with unparalleled martial arts. Chapter 39. Li Long pointed in a direction, and Lu Hong strode over. The Iron Fist was not particularly skilled in movement techniques, but he took 7 or 8 steps longer with each step than a regular person. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and he did not slow down at all. Before long, he arrived where the Black Wind Mountain bandits had stopped and set up a campfire. Only a few corpses remained there now, and a few wolves were currently gnawing on the corpses. They raised their heads and let out threatening howls when they heard the noise. Lu Hong snorted coldly like a clap of thunder. The wolves howled and fled in fright. Lu Hong examined the corpses. This really is the power of the stone splitter bow. Huang Binggu has actually given away his famed weapon. Is he Huang Binggu's disciple? No, with that sickly tiger's martial arts, he can't raise a disciple like that. Though, since he's given the stone splitter bow to him, Huang Binggu probably intends for him to take over as hunting chief. No wonder he's not afraid of the Black Wind stronghold. As long as he returns to the Drawn Rains village, the Black Wind stronghold won't be able to do anything to him. It's not like they can destroy the Drawn Rains village. Does Li Qingshan really want to kill them all? The smell of blood stung his nostrils, and Li Long trembled slightly. He had practiced martial arts for over a decade, so fighting and brawling was nothing out of the ordinary for him. However, with the influence of the Iron Fist in Qingyang City, he did not have a corresponding opponent to fight him to the death. At most, he would teach a lesson to some ignorant hooligan or passerby of the Jianghu. He had never seen so many corpses before. Since we've become sworn enemies, we obviously have to kill them all. Long, it's just too easy in Qingyang City. Originally, with your talent, your skills should have been much greater than this. Lu Hong felt like it was only natural, so he taught a lesson to his disciple. Li Long stammered, unable to reply. Lu Hong continued to examine the corpses. These wounds are so strange. He discovered a bandit who had died from having his throat slit. What's so strange about it? This bandit died in a pile of people. Look at his expression and posture when he died. He doesn't seem to have reacted at all. What's this all about? Afterwards, he discovered many other bandit corpses with the same wounds. Li Long's heart shivered as he imagined the strange sight. He could not help but look around. The dark mountains and forests seemed to be hiding ghosts. Only when he saw Lu Hong did he feel much more at ease. As long as your movement technique is good enough, you can achieve that. However, across the entire Qingyang, only the sect master of the Dragon's Gate sect can rival a movement technique like that. Not only does this Li Qingshan have assistants, but he's very powerful as well. No matter how experienced Lu Hong was in the Jianghu, he couldn't guess that the mountain bandits couldn't react because they couldn't see the enemy. They followed the tracks left on the ground and went deep into the mountains. The corpses of the bandits were as obvious as road signs. Some fell to the ground after being hit by arrows, while others died from having their throats slit. Li Qingshan had grabbed him by the neck. Back then, he had not been very afraid, but now, he actually felt lingering fear. They discovered another bandit's corpse. Li Long said, "The bandits are all dead. Only the third boss remains." Afterwards, they discovered a pony that had collapsed on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Before long, Lu Hong stopped and gazed below a large tree. Even he, an experienced member of the Jianghu, was extremely shocked. The blood had spread very far. The smell of blood was even heavier than around the campfire where most of the bandits had died just now. With just a single glance, Li Long could not help but vomit, as if he wanted to vomit up all the horrors he had seen tonight. For the entire night, the third boss seemed to be submerged in a nightmare that he could not wake up from. The people around him died one by one, while the god of death closed in on him step by step. The third boss circulated his movement technique and desperately fled towards the Black Wind stronghold. Although he was not as fast as the Dragon's Gate sect, perhaps the danger had stimulated his potential, so he was not slow at all. The sinister wind circled around him, chasing him closely. He did not dare to stop at all. Only when he had expended all of his inner chi did he stop. He stopped under a large tree and panted heavily. Looking down the slope, he could already see the traces of the Black Wind's stronghold. Just as he smiled, twang! The arrow whistled through the air, piercing through his thigh and nailing deep into the tree trunk. Withered leaves fell like rain. The third boss ignored the intense pain. He looked at the terrifying figure walking out of the forest with a smile on his face. He was like a hunter who had caught his prey that he had been chasing for a long time. The bowstring in his hand was still vibrating. This is the end, third boss. I admit defeat today. The Jianghu is a small place, so why not make friends? Ah! In such a dangerous moment, the third boss actually took on the attitude of a hoodlum and began to speak in the Jianghu. However, before he could finish, an arrow pierced through him. Don't mention that word, because you're not worthy. Come, speak. Tell me everything about the Black Wind stronghold. How many people do you have? How many bosses do you have? What martial arts does the first boss practice? If I tell you, will you spare me? The third boss was covered in sweat. He was in pain and fear. Li Qingshan considered it for a moment. No. I already said that you must die today. I'll give you a quick death. He did not even need to lie. He just told the third boss clearly that he wanted to kill him. He could tell him or not. The third boss said, fuck you. If you want to kill me, come at me. Let's see if I'll even frown. Li Qingshan smiled coldly. That's exactly what I wanted. A red light that even he did not notice flowed in the depths of his eyes. Li Long forced himself to calm down, but his eyes avoided the corpse under the tree. Master, should we continue chasing? Lu Hong waved his hand. There's no need. With such a star of evil appearing, the Jianghu will be filled with trouble from now on. He had seen many ruthless people in the Jianghu. This third boss was not inferior to them. However, it was rare to see someone so ruthless and merciless as soon as they entered the Jianghu. Who wouldn't want to vomit a few times? Only after experiencing many life and death experiences could one's heart gradually harden. Li Long said, he's only a third-rate martial artist. He relied on a sneak attack to heavily injure the third boss. Why does Master care so much about him? Lu Hong said, I can only tell you that there are many people like this in the Jianghu. Not a single one of them is weak. Any martial arts in the hands of such people can display extraordinary power. Do not carelessly make an enemy out of them. Why is that? Li Long did not understand. Could it be that being vicious and merciless meant that one's martial arts were high? The essence of martial arts lies in killing. However, Li Qingshan, who was regarded as a star of evil by Lu Hong, was currently kneeling by the stream and vomiting. His tears flowed down his face as he vomited. In the end, the third boss bones were not as hard as he had said. He told Li Qingshan everything he wanted to know in full detail. All he wanted was to die. After killing the third boss, the red light in his eyes dimmed. He seemed to have realized what he had done. He had used an incomparably cruel method to torture a living person. But that was not all. What was more frightening was that he felt great pleasure from it. What's going on with me? A cow's hoof stepped into the stream. Li Qingshan raised his head. Oxen looked at him and said with a tone that seemed to be praising and mocking, you're becoming more and more like a demon. Chapter 40. Oxen asked, do you still want to continue? Don't blame me for not warning you. You might really end up becoming a demon. As long as I have a clear conscience and can freely express my thoughts, I will have no regrets even if I end up becoming a demon, Li Qingshan said as he stood up. His confused heart was instead strengthened by Oxen's words. Oxen could not help but look at him in a different light. Even a cultivator with a firm will would feel fear and repulsion when they heard that they would fall into the path of demons and become a demon. It had already prepared itself to patiently advise him, but Li Qingshan was not too affected. He was still firm in his choice and did not show any signs of wavering. It was truly rare. However, this was also good. If he was the kind of person who would only care about this kind of thing, it would not be worth Oxen's effort. The age that Li Qingshan lived in his past life was an age of information explosion. As a shut-in, he consumed various movies and novels day and night as mental sustenance. He had come across the most diverse thoughts, as well as witnessed the most terrifying and grand spectacles. Under the impact of all kinds of information, his ability to accept things was probably something few people in this era could compare to. He would not be bound by any traditional way of thinking. This kind of advantage and strength was slowly showing itself, and he displayed a power that no magical ability or artifact could replace. No matter how strong Li Qingshan's cultivation talent was, it was difficult for Oxen to take him seriously. However, his personality was unique and completely different, which was why Oxen placed great importance on him. "Come with me." One ox and one man advanced through the pathless mountains. Oxen did not say where they were going, and Li Qingshan did not ask. After he understood the strength of the Black Wind's stronghold from the third boss, he immediately knew that he was no match for them. He could only become stronger. After walking for an unknown period of time, there was suddenly a sound in the forest. As he moved forward, the rumbling sound grew closer and closer, until it was like thunder. The scenery in front of him suddenly became clear. On a cliff that was dozens of feet high, a waterfall flew straight down and fell into the pool like a jade dragon, splashing snowflake-like foam. In the center of the pool, there was a big whirlpool that kept spinning, and there were many smaller whirlpools around it. Li Qingshan stood in front of the waterfall. Even though he had a strong will, he still felt a little shaken in the face of nature's creation. "Brother Nyo, what is this?" "Waterfall." "Of course I know it's a waterfall. Why did you bring me here?" "Of course it's cultivation." At this time, a broken piece of wood fell from the top of the waterfall and was instantly sucked into the whirlpool. It crashed into the rocks in the water and broke into pieces. If a person were to be sucked into it, they would definitely die horribly. Li Qingshan gasped. "It's in here." Oxen said, "If you want to cultivate the strength of a bull, this is the fastest shortcut. Whether you want to take it or not, it's all up to you." With that, Li Qingshan leapt into the pool resolutely. In the air, the information he had obtained from the third boss flashed through his head. The Black Wind stronghold had around 300 people, and there were a total of 7 bosses. Of course, there were 6 of them now, and 5 of them were third-rate masters. The first boss was known as the Black Bear, Xiong Xianggu. He was a true second-rate master, and he could defeat the other bosses if they worked together. Li Qingshan's current martial arts were only at the peak of the third rate. If he did not use sneak attacks, he would probably only be able to deal with 2 bosses working together. If he faced 3, he would definitely lose. He could only flee, let alone face the master of the Black Wind stronghold. He was a colossal figure that he could not defeat right now. The only good news was that once winter came, the mountains would be sealed off by snow. If the Black Wind stronghold wanted to carry out a large-scale operation, they would have to wait until spring at the very least. That was the time he had left. He had to become even stronger. Only then could he stop the Black Wind stronghold, protect the Crouching Ox village, and fulfill his promise. Various thoughts flashed through his head. He saw the water surface grow closer and closer, and the toughness of Li Qingshan's mental fortitude appeared. He immediately suppressed all of his nervousness and fear. His mind was at peace, and he quickly adjusted his position. He sucked in a deep breath and dove into the water. Oxen muttered from the top of the pool, "I even said I'd take it step by step. I'd start meditating under the waterfall." Immediately, it felt a wave of resentment attack it. Little and stared at it fixedly, and Oxen felt slightly uncomfortable. "Brat, don't look at me like that." The rapids slammed against Li Qingshan's body. He was like a small boat in a storm, unable to control himself. He could collide with the rocks at any time and sink. Li Qingshan was quite skilled in the water, but he was unable to unleash it at all right now. He used the ox demon forges its hide, and the pain from the water against his skin vanished. Before he could even catch his breath, a black shadow pressed towards him. The rapids pushed him towards the rocks. The huge log earlier served as an example. Even with the ox demon forges its hide, he would still die from being smashed to pieces. It was far too difficult to fend off the power of nature with the body of a human. The ox demon stamps its hooves. A mouthful of true qi sank into his dantian, and Li Qingshan's body seemed to grow heavier out of nowhere. Suddenly, he plummeted and landed on the tough bottom of the pool. The rocks cracked, leaving behind 2 deep footprints. However, when he reached the bottom of the pool, the direction of the current changed again, pulling him towards the largest whirlpool. He tried his best to stay where he was, fighting against the current. Soon, he used up his breath, and a suffocating feeling gripped him tightly. In this kind of current, it was impossible to swim out of the water. As soon as his feet left the water, he would be sucked into the whirlpool by the current. Soon, he lost his consciousness. Even the deafening roar seemed to be far away. Suddenly, he felt a chill in his chest, and his true qi reacted automatically. When Li Qingshan regained his consciousness, he saw Little and pressing his chest anxiously, and the yin qi triggered the reaction of his true qi. In this moment of life and death, his true qi suddenly circulated faster, rushing into his mouth and nose. The feeling of suffocation vanished, replaced by innate true qi. Li Qingshan had never expected true qi to have such a wondrous use. He nodded at Little and to express his gratitude before gritting his teeth and releasing his feet, allowing the current to suck him into the huge whirlpool. Little and paced around the surroundings of the whirlpool for a while before suddenly making up his mind. He returned to shore and knelt down, bowing to Oxen. Oxen asked, "You want to help him?" Little and nodded violently. Lu Hong and Li Long returned to the Crouching Ox village and comforted the villagers before returning to Qingyang City. The village seemed to have returned to peace, but the feeling of unease could not be shaken off. The Black Wind stronghold was like a terrifying mountain pressing down on their heads. Many people wanted to flee the village. However, Li Qingshan's promise before he left gave everyone hope. At a critical moment, the prodigy of the village, Li Long, was unable to protect them, and the important figure of the city, Lu Hong, had only arrived afterwards. Only Li Qingshan stood before them all, protecting them all alone. Afterwards, the rumored soldiers appeared and took away the heads of the 3rd boss and several dozen bandits. Qingyang City shook up. There was actually someone bold enough to offend the Black Wind stronghold. Both the righteous and the righteous learnt a name, Li Qingshan. In the government office, the fat district magistrate ordered the advisor, "Quick, report the merit to the prefect." As soon as I arrived in Qingyang City, I annihilated a group of bandits. If anyone still dares to say I'm useless, hang their heads on the city gates and let the people of the city know my power. Also, find that Li Qingshan. I want to thank him in person for saving my life and give him great riches and honor. The advisor said, "Sir, it's only right to report the merit to the prefect, but there's no need to hang their heads. The Black Wind stronghold is not to be trifled with. As for that Li Qingshan, he'll probably die." Yes, in the eyes of many people, Li Qingshan was already a dead man. Although they admired Li Qingshan's viciousness and martial arts, no one believed he was the opponent of the Black Wind stronghold. The Black Bear, Xiong Xianguo, was a figure who could stop children from crying at night in Qingyang City. He had made a name for himself even before Li Qingshan. The two of them were on completely different levels.